meeting of the St. Helena City Council for July 12, 2016. Due to technical reasons, this meeting will not be live streamed, but it will go up on the audio video shortly. So let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Vice Mayor White.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Black, roll call.
Mayor Galbraith,
Here.
Vice Mayor White,
Here.
Councilmember Doring,
Here.
Kroll, here, and Councilmember Pitts is absent.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is public forum. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address us on matters not on our agenda, and the time limit is 3 minutes.
Jeff Ellsworth, 1434 Sylvaner. I was recently directed to a site called Sperling's Best Places. I guess it analyzes places to live around the United States. When I looked into St. Helena, Napa, the water rating was a 27 out of a possible 100. Flint, Michigan is rated at 20, and the national median is 25. And from their website, it says these are based on EPA numbers. So I think that's something we need to think about. We also, in Napa County, have the highest rate of cancer in the state of California for children and for Caucasian adults, and the second highest for Hispanic adults. So I think these are issues we need to be thinking about when we discuss other issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ellsworth?
Thank you. Well
Okay.
done.
Resetting
Well
the
done.
podium. Very good. Anybody else wish to speak at public comment? I'll close public comment or public forum and turn to reports by staff and city council and begin with the acting city manager, Mr. Hausch.
Nothing tonight, Mayor, other than to say that Ms. Phillips is out on vacation and the July 26th meeting, so the next council meeting is canceled.
Okay. Mr. Brown? Ms. Mitz?
I wanted to let our council and residents know that starting next week, our forensic auditors are coming back on site for another week, so it's their second round, and I just want to give you that update.
Okay, very good. Ms. Black? Mr. Palmer? Ms. Kroll?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Doring?
No, thank you. I have nothing.
Mr. White? And nothing other than to repeat that I certainly enjoyed that fireworks show. Ms. Perkowski, I didn't...
Pardon me, Mayor. Is that on? Pardon me, Mayor. I would like to make a brief announcement. I guess as it turns out, I could have stayed at the podium after reoriented, but I'm very pleased to announce that the city recently was awarded a $500,000 grant from what's called the Home Investment Partnership Program. It's a fantastic program. It's federal money that gives out 0% interest loans to eligible low-income and moderate-income individuals. The city is going to be partnering with the City of Napa Housing Authority to implement the program. And one of the best parts of it is, since it is a loan program, as the city gets the money back in, we actually keep those funds, and by federal statute, we create our own revolving loan fund so we can continue to support low and moderate income homeowners for years and years and years to come. The only downside is the Home Investment Partnership Program is known for being rather slow, so don't expect a full rollout for about 6 to 8 months. But $500,000 is on our way to our community, and I think that's a very, very good thing.
Thank you very much. An excellent thing.
Good news. Thank you.
All right. That takes us to our monthly briefing on waters. Ms. Toole.
Good evening. Well, this is powering up. There we go. So, not last month, but the month before, I discussed that I was rolling out a whole bunch of rebates for water conservation. And council had asked when that information was going to be up. And so that information now has been up online for several weeks. So there's two ways to get to all the information. You can go to cityofsthelena.org/water, or you can click on that little drippy leaking faucet right there. And that will take you to the web page that has all the rebate applications and information. So this is just a screenshot of the website, but if you scroll down, there's all the other rebates and pilot programs that council approved in May. So currently I have May data. I have not gotten the June data from the city of Napa. They typically bill on the 15th, so I have not gotten the bill from Napa to get the exact information of what our water consumption or production has been. So in May, we were down about 15%, which is significantly different from the month of April. And as you can see, this chart also illustrates that we were doing very good in 2015, and the water consumption is more on track with what it was in 2014. And also, Bell Canyon is tracking at a higher percentage rate than it was in years past. So that is also looking very promising. So I'm continuing to work on the water and wastewater rate study. Today I met with the Director of Finance and Public Works Director for about 5 hours with the rate consultant. So there is a whole bunch of information coming. And I'm continuing to look at the existing water agreements we have, and that number's about 55 water agreements we have with different entities. I'm continuing the outreach. As I mentioned the last presentation, one of the changes that the state has made in their mandate is that we do need to reach out to people and let them know if they have a leak as soon as possible, and that's something that we've been doing for several months. And additionally, the state has lifted the requirement of the 2-day-a-week watering, and staff is currently evaluating what that means for St. Helena and where we go from here for our watering restrictions and other drought regulations. I'm continuing outreach at the farmers market. I'm trying to hit at least a couple farmers markets every month, if not more. And I will be doing a direct mail that is bilingual for all the rebate programs that does have information about the current water restrictions, the water neutrality program, so that's when the developer comes into someone's home and retrofits the toilets, and the list of all the new/updated rebate programs. So I want to do a save the date. As of right now, the Ad Hoc Revenue Source Task Force is scheduled to meet in the morning on August 4th. As I mentioned just a second ago, we just met with a rate consultant today, so I will be sending out more information on the exact time and location. I needed to meet with them to see how much time she thought we needed for the task force to review the information. And it looks like we're going to allocate about 3 hours for the meeting. So we're tentatively scheduling the meeting at 9 a.m. on August 4th, and more information will be coming out about that.
Where is it going to be?
I do not know yet, but I want, because this is the last council meeting before that meeting, I want to at least get the information out there that it's going to be on August 4th. Were there any questions about the state changes or anything like that?
Well, there are some state rules that continue on, right? You're not
Correct.
supposed to water, for example, within 48 hours of a foreseeable rain
Correct.
event or afterwards, and there are perhaps a couple of others that are continuing on. So
Yes.
perhaps somewhere it would be good to have those listed out so people can see them.
Yeah, the bulk of the restrictions have remained the same. The one thing that was added was notifying people if they have a leak or if we think they have a potential leak, and then lifting the 2-day-a-week watering. But currently, the 2-day-a-week watering is in our municipal code. So it's something that I'm working with the Public Works Director to evaluate what that means for our community.
Okay, good.
And additional reporting is needed until January 2017. So there's, because we're a small water provider, we're not required to do a lot of the things that the urban water providers are required to do. We just have to show that we're tracking and also prove or create some sort of synopsis about what conservation programs we have currently. And the state has not come out with what the reporting form is going to look like. So all we know at this time is we're going to have to tell them about our conservation programs.
And when you say them, it's the State Water Board.
Correct.
All right.
And when we notify people they have a leak, do we give them a list of potential contractors to locate and fix it?
Currently, we do not recommend any private companies. I believe that's an unspoken somewhat policy in the city that we're not saying go to company A, B, or C. What I'm doing currently is saying leak detection companies typically have the best results, and search online for a leak detection company that serves St. Helena, rather than recommending a company because I do not have personal experience with any of these companies and cannot vouch for them.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see, that
Thank you.
that takes us to our proclamation for the evening. Frequent proclamation receiver. All right, let me readjust the dangerous thing to do. Okay. What we have here is designation of July as Park and Recreation Month. Whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout the country, including the city of St. Helena, and whereas our parks and recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of the community and region, and whereas parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens, and whereas parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction, and whereas parks and recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community, and whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife, and whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors, and whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and whereas the City of St. Helena recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, now therefore let it be resolved that I, Alan Galbraith, Mayor of the City of St. Helena, do hereby proclaim the month of July as recognized as Park and Recreation Month in the City of St. Helena, dated July 12, 2016. So, Heidi, a few words? Here's your proclamation.
I just want to say very quickly, thank you for your constant support, not only for our youth programming and adult programming, but for everything we do with the Teen Center, as well as with all of our parks and special events. As you know, we just finished the 4th of July, a great community event for our city. So thank you for your constant support. Without that, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And today I'd like to introduce two of our commissioners. They're a big part of my team at the Parks and Rec, which is Commissioner Kim Feeney and Tracy Smith. I believe they want to say maybe one thing.
I didn't know this was happening. This is a huge deal. And I would like to recognize Heidi
because Heidi is the one woman show behind all of this and allows us the freedom to take on projects. And thank you for supporting the projects that we do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Turn this back around this way. Okay, that takes us to our consent calendar, and any member of the council, any member of the public can pull any item, just let me know. The city has pulled item 11, so I'm going to skip, item 13, so I'm going to skip over item 13. Item 8, consideration of proposed approval of regular meeting minutes of June 28th, 2016. 9, consideration of proposed approval of a resolution approving a First Amendment to the Professional Services Agreement with Kleinfelder Incorporated in the amount of $66,039 for additional work required for geotechnical and seismic analysis of the St. Helena Lower Dam Capital Improvement Project W108 for a total agreement amount of $156,734. And I might add that comes out of the Water Fund Enterprise Fund. 10, consideration of proposed approval of a resolution approving the contract change order number 4 to the construction contract for Bell Canyon Reservoir, install new frame and sluice gate on water intake tower, CIP project W84 with DRS Marine Inc. in the amount of $31,922 to DSR Marine Inc. for critical repairs of the upper valve at Bell Canyon Reservoir intake tower. Those were some photographs, I must say. But again, this is a water fund project. All right, 12, consideration and proposed approval of a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a utility easement deed and agreement with Spring Mountain Hotel, LLC, and Napa Valley Wine Train for a sewer force main. 13, as I said, was pulled.
Skipped 11. We're questioning that.
Oh, 11. Okay, yeah, okay, pulled. And I skipped over 11, did I? Okay, 11 was consideration and proposed approval of a resolution accepting the work and directing the filing of the notice of completion for the Charter Oak at Highway 29 Sewer Replacement Capital Improvement Project S-68. 13 was pulled by the city, as I said. 14, budget consideration, proposed approval of resolution approving contract amendment number 2 with the Municipal Resources Group to provide professional planning services for an additional amount of, says $190,000, but it should be $160,000, for a total contract amount not to exceed $321,500. And my understanding is that no budget adjustment is needed for that item. We do have an amended resolution with respect to it. So at this point, the chair would entertain a motion to approve consent items 8, 9, 10, 11, and 14.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Black?
Councilmember Kroll,
Yes.
Vice Mayor White,
Yes.
Councilmember Doreen,
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith.
Yes. That takes us back to 12, which relates to the utility easement deed and agreement with Spring Mountain Hotel relating to the sewer force main. Mr. Palmer?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This item is required as a condition of approval for the Los Alcabas Hotel project there, Grandview Hotel. One of the conditions of approval that the project was required to construct a new sewer force main to replace the existing force main that runs from the lift station at Cornella neighborhood over to Fulton Lane. The existing force main at the time the project was approved was determined to be over capacity with the addition of the hotel project. So the hotel was commissioned to construct a new sewer force main to replace the old one, which is now a larger diameter, 6-inch. The alignment that they've chosen runs out the back of the sewer pump station instead of into the street through the residential neighborhood. It goes out the back to the wine train property, along the wine train property over to Fulton Lane, where it connects into the city's sewer system. So this agreement is needed to specify the terms of that construction that allows the hotel developer to build the sewer force main on the wine train property, and also allows the city to accept an easement from the wine train and the developer for that sewer for us to continue to operate and maintain it moving forward. I'll
Any initial questions from council? Well, let me open the public hearing and invite public comment.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Anthony McKelly, and I live at the corner of Cornella Drive and Park Street. I've been there for 32 plus years right now. I'm first going to give you a little history about this because I don't know if all you know about this pump station that's existing at the end of our street, but it was constructed back in the 60s by Henry Volker for only the subdivision of Cornella, only. Then, and that pump station used to go from it is presently, pumps by my house, up to Main Street, where the intersection of Cornella and Main is where the sewer ends on Main Street. All the houses on the east side of Cornella all have septic systems. Since then, though, the city has allowed the CIA to build their new building, tie into that system, with no improvements to it. The only thing I understand, and if I'm wrong in any of this, I'd appreciate if the Public Works Director would correct me. Their only requirement was to just pump at night or off-peak hours because it would overflow the system during the day. And I don't know if they even do that. I don't even know if there's any monitoring anymore, or even if there was. But somebody needs to monitor that because it is causing a problem to the residents there. After that, you let all the houses, all the million-dollar homes, plus their guest houses, plus their granny units on Pratt Avenue tie into that sewer system. Plus you let the development that the Episcopal Church built just before the railroad track tie into that development. And now the Grandview project gets to tie into that development. But everybody says the system is going to work just fine and not break down and all that, but you got to remember it was built in the 60s only for the Cornell area. So I have two concerns. And first I'm going to read a letter. Well, first I should say that we met with Paul Doring, your city councilman, about 2 months ago on this because we were concerned about it, citizens that live in the Cornell area. He then wrote to Mr. Palmer, who sent him an email, which also went to the city, the lady who's not here tonight, your city manager.
Okay.
Okay, and I want to read this letter because I want to make sure that this council, because Mayor Gilbreth, when you came into office, you said you'd be very transparent and nothing's going to happen like the old councils, that things got shoved under the door. But I want to read this letter to make sure that this development abides by what Mr. Palmer told Mr. Doring and the city manager. And this letter was written on May 9th of 2016. The Grandview development is required to construct a forced new main from Cornell Pump Station to the sewer line on Fulton at Railroad Avenue before the certificate of occupancy can be issued. The developer is well aware of this condition of approval. There is no requirement to reconstruct the lift station. The plan check is complete for the new sewer force main. The developer has not yet required...
Please continue, yeah.
Oh, thank you. The developer has not yet acquired the right-of-way, although they are in negotiations with the wine train. They are not allowed to start work on the sewer main until they have the right-of-way or agreement to construct. I do not know their schedule for completing the hotel or site improvements. However, they are not allowed to obtain a certificate of occupancy until the sewer force main is operational.
Right.
My two questions is, the city here is working to get this right away, I'm assuming. Are they getting reimbursed by the hotel people, or is this on our dime now? Because the city has never been very good at negotiating with developers in this town. I mean, it's happened all the time. And that's a question, and I want to make sure they cannot open their hotel until they take care of this requirement they have to do.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any
Thank
other
you.
public comment? And then I'll ask the Public Works Director to respond to those two questions.
Hi, Griffin, 1824 Park Street. I live in the same development area there. A prime example of what takes place there with the sewer. Sunday, we tried to celebrate my father-in-law's 81st birthday out in the patio. I buy a house, want to enjoy the backyard, nice summer day and all this stuff. We're barbecuing. The sewer smell was so bad we had to go inside and about had to put a gas mask on to barbecue. And that's how it is over there. You people are all invited to come over and take a look, smell, whatever you want to do. There is a big problem there, and you continue to let these people, down the road you got the culinary, want to build a 3-story thing on Pratt Avenue. They're going to pump it into there. What goes here, you know? you got to address this issue. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Hoppy. I live in Christine Court in St. Helena. I live in the same neighborhood, and the smell some nights is atrocious. I called the city last summer 4 or 5 times, never got a phone call back from the city on this issue, and it was pretty frustrating. I'd like to see something done with it because the smell is pretty tough in our backyards times of the year.
Okay.
Jeff Ellsworth, Sylvaner. Yeah, I think this speaks to a sort of a systemic problem. If we're adding to a system that's already troubled, and we just think we're going to just keep adding to it without dealing with the problem, then we're just going to get into a deeper problem. I think that the entities that are creating the larger impacts should be bearing the costs of that. And that goes back to what we talk about cost-benefit analysis when we look at projects. How do they benefit us? What does it cost us? And what does it do to our citizens? We know that citizens lost parking on their on-street parking to that project in that area. And now we're seeing more problems. So how do we, I say, stop and address it now and come up with a systemic plan? You know, my father was a systems engineer. And what I learned from him is you cannot design a system without acknowledging all the factors that play into it. And so now is the time for us to do that before we build on a foundation that's not firm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further public comment?
Thank you.
All right, let me close the public comment. And Mr. Palmer, can you address particularly who is paying for the improvement? And then secondly, I believe the commentators stated that the city would not issue a certificate of occupancy until that was done. You might just comment on that briefly.
Absolutely. So the cost for the easement and negotiations with the wine train and the actual cost of constructing the sewer line is all borne by the developer. So there's no city funds going towards that. There is some city staff time, mine in particular, and a plan checker helping to review things. Our time is covered through the plan check fees. So when the developer comes in, he submits to approved plans, they submit a user fee that is used to cover our plan check costs. What was the second part?
The second part dealt with the certificate of occupancy.
Right, and that's absolutely correct. The condition of approval is very clear that no certificate of occupancy can be issued until the sewer force main is constructed.
And is it tested before the certificate of occupancy is
Yes.
issued?
Yes.
All right. And then one further issue that was raised, which is the smell that emanates from that facility, particularly on warm summer days. My thought there is that this is perhaps an issue that could be looked at in connection with the current wastewater study that's underway. And if we need capital money there, we should try to provide it.
Yes, I take these concerns very seriously, and we'll look into it and see if we can figure out a solution.
Okay, very good. Any further council discussion?
Go ahead, go ahead.
My topic is another topic, so you may want to stay on this one for a second.
Okay, well, this is the first I've ever heard of the bad aroma in the Cronulla neighborhood, so I'm sorry about that. But it's my understanding that this situation with the hotel is that it's not going to be impacting that or making that worse, right? They're actually. Oh, I'm sorry. It's my understanding that almost in recognition of the potential for overload is why we're making them do this new force main, right?
That's exactly right. When they looked at the development and looked at the condition of the existing system, the gravity sewer and the pump station, when the project was conceived, they evaluated the capacity at lift station and the capacity of the downstream force main, so there's an existing 4-inch force main that pumps out of that station, and they determined that the lift station was fine, the gravity sewers draining into that lift station were fine, but the 4-inch force main that was pumping out of this station was undersized.
Right, so I'm just wondering if some of those homes on Pratt could go into this new force main and maybe alleviate some of the problems in the Cronulla neighborhood. I am not an engineer, and I have no idea if that's feasible or if that's a way to take some pressure off that system.
Well, that sewer all drains into this.
But is that going to could that help? is it going to help the problem by putting this new force main in?
Yes, it will. It will make, it increases capacity, so it'll reduce the amount of sewage and the time the sewage sits in that pump station. Help reduce odors, but it
Maybe it'll be better.
Do we know where the smell is coming from? You're assuming it's from the pump station, but my understanding is it's coming from various areas in that neighborhood.
quite honestly, this is the first I've heard of an odor complaint out there. So if there was some questions that were raised last year or something that didn't raise to my level, I haven't heard about it. So I take it very seriously. I'll look into it immediately and see if there's something that can be done.
I mean, when we had that presentation about the new dorms on Pratt, I brought this up because I was made aware of some of the problems at the Cronulla pump station. So I think we really need to take a look at this and delve into it and find out what causes that before we put any more usage into it.
But this
Yeah, I don't think.
resolution isn't going to add to any problems. If anything, it's going to alleviate.
No, I totally agree with that. But any other projects that come along, I think we need to solve that
Okay, very good.
smell problem.
All right. Would you like me to reopen the public comment?
Clarify a few things maybe before.
Let me reopen the public comment if you wish to speak briefly.
Yeah, so you're kind of on board. There is a line that comes from down the Culinary, which used to be the rest home, back, years ago. And it goes into that pump station, and that's where they were supposed to pump on non-peak hours from what I've been told. I've complained about this. I bought the house in '91, and the smell was there when I moved in, and I didn't know it. The city, in the past, had came out and put big deodorizer blocks in the manhole in the street, years ago, but now you can't even buy them in California, I guess, from the word I got from the city. I mean, it's way before all you people got here. This has been going on for years. And then now, through adding on to the system and adding on, there was a developer that came in, and one of the conditions was do work at the pump station. It didn't get done. He made his money, sold his $1 million homes, and down the street he went. And that's the problem occurs and keeps going.
The good news is I think that this is.
And where the smell comes, it comes right up your vent pipe from the houses. Everybody in the neighborhood smells it. And on hot days, yeah, it's worse, and we do have smell from Behringer's ponds over there, but that's a whole different issue. And they've been, addressed with that, and they've done a pretty good job of, stopping the smell there, aerating and stuff. But the city sewer gases just keep coming up, and you keep adding to it, and it's just gonna get worse and worse and worse.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Good explanation. All right. We close the public hearing. Is there any further council
I
discussion?
just had a little bit more inquiry on the easement language itself. I noticed in Exhibit B to the easement under Section 11 indemnity, it's on page 4 and 5. It appears that we, the grantee, are indemnifying the wine train, and that Spring Mountain Hotel itself is indemnifying the wine train. But I don't see anywhere where Spring Mountain is indemnifying the city. And I'm not sure if that was thought through or if there's a response to that, and whether we should have that indemnity or whether there will be another place in the future to obtain that kind of indemnification.
I work with the city attorney's office on this, and we had a long discussion about indemnity. I don't think I can answer the question very well.
No, it's clearly a legal question, and I should have brought it up earlier. I'm just concerned, is it time, I'm worried about the risk. I'm probably not a huge risk, but it seems like everybody's getting indemnified but the city itself.
Yeah, this was handled by another attorney in my office. I personally wasn't involved. I know that he did work with Public Works staff on those issues, and typically with indemnity provisions, we point out who's indemnifying whom, and it's usually a business decision that's made at the staff level. I don't know whether that discussion happened here or not.
Right, and I'm trying to recall. The point of the agreement, the agreement basically says that the Spring Mountain Hotel is obligated to construct the improvements on the wine train property, and in return, the wine train is going to grant the easement to the city. I don't know what So I don't know if we had the discussion about indemnifying, whether Spring Mountain should indemnify the city against something, and I don't know if it'd be, like Tom was saying, I don't know if that's something that would provide, if there's a lot of risk there for that. It seems
Will
like
there be another opportunity when we see the construction documents? You know, Spring Mountain is going to go forward and hire a contractor. Is there an opportunity at that point to insist that the city get indemnified for the construction and anything
Yes,
arising therefrom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, associated with the construction, they are required to get a permit. So they'll get an encroachment permit with the contractor's indemnity language, insurance, and those sorts of things. And then the city will inspect the improvements and accept them before they're accepted as complete.
Okay. I'm
Ultimately,
sorry.
it comes to city council as well.
Okay.
For acceptance.
That's good. I'm sorry, Sharon.
Well, is it that big of a deal to add the city in as a person to be indemnified? Is that going to hold the whole thing up?
Well, typically, so correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Palmer. My understanding here is that the city is the beneficiary of this easement. Typically, the beneficiary is not in a strong position to insist on indemnity in these agreements. So asking for that, for the indemnity under the circumstance when we're asking them to give us something is sometimes difficult to negotiate. I don't know whether that's the case here. Again, I wasn't involved in that discussion that took place, but it would be a little bit anomalous. It would be a little unusual to, for the recipient of the easement to be asking for indemnity.
And does the easement kick in after the construction is finished? So maybe we don't, in other words, because the concern is that if there's something happens in conjunction with the construction, the person sues everybody, including the city. The problem is that when something happens during the construction, whoever is the plaintiff is suing everybody, including the city. If we are not in a position to be the owner of that easement until after the construction is done and then we have an easement, maybe it doesn't matter. I don't know. I don't know when we take ownership of that easement or when we become the beneficiary of that easement.
I really can't speak knowledgeably to this because I haven't reviewed these documents personally. They were done, as I said, by another lawyer in my office. If the council's interested in having considered answers to these questions, perhaps this should be pulled and we can bring it back at a later date. I don't know whether there are time constraints on that would make that unwise.
I would think there were time constraints with respect to this because Los Alcobas is nearing completion, and I would hate for us to be put in the position where they could argue that we're delaying them.
I don't want to delay it either. And maybe we can address it in the construction document.
You have anything further insight into this?
Well, I'm
Mr.
just
White?
of the mind, I think we're covered, personally, from being in development, that the construction's going to require the permit, like Mr. Palmer said, and we've got control over the inspections, so I don't know what we would be indemnified for. And I would hate to see this held up and the improvements not made. So
I can think of 100 things, but I'm a lawyer.
yeah, that's a problem.
And I agree with the city attorney that typically we wouldn't be expecting the wine train to indemnify us, but we have a third party here that's basically controlling the construction. And if the contractor hits something down below and it causes a problem to the wine train, and we end up, we're the ones who are indemnifying the wine train, so we're going to have to come out of pocket, and then we're going to have to look to Spring Mountain, and that was what I was looking at. But I feel comfortable that in the construction documents, if we have to be alert to that we should be indemnified by the contractor directly. That would be my suggestion. I'm just trying to.
We can't control the construction documents because it's not our land, and we don't even have an easement.
But we
yet.
do that through our permit process.
Through the permit process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would also mention that Mr. House just mentioned to me that a standard condition of city approval of the underlying development with the project applicant does require them to indemnify and defend the city. Whether and to what extent that extends to this, I haven't been able to look at, obviously. Yeah, so, but that's, it is possible that there is indemnity covering that.
In their original use permit, I would think, yeah.
Okay, well, I think,
So I would move to approve.
all right, there's a motion by Councilmember White to approve. Is there a second? Ms. Black?
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Kroll?
Yes.
Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. Okay, that then takes us to our first public hearing, which is consideration and proposed approval of a resolution approving the issuance of revenue bonds by the California Statewide Communities Development Authority for the purpose of financing the... 13 was pulled by the city. Correct. So, we're on 15. Consideration and proposed approval of a resolution approving the issuance of revenue bonds by the California Statewide Communities Development Authority for the purpose of financing the improvement of certain educational facilities located in St. Helena, California for the benefit of the Culinary Institute of America. And it's in connection with this particular item that we have a revised resolution that contains language prepared by the city attorney, which should be addressed either by Ms. Mitz, who is sponsoring this item, or the city attorney.
I'm going to turn that portion over to Noah or the city attorney. So as you know, you are being asked to consider a proposed approval of a resolution, and they are bonds that are going to be issued by CSCDA. I'm just going to shorten that, for the Culinary Institute of America, or CIA. CIA has requested that CSCDA serve as the issuer of tax-exempt bonds, an amount not to exceed, it's actually $14 million. I did get clarification from CSCDA today, and they can explain if there's more questions on that. He is here to answer any questions. The proceeds of the bonds will be used to finance the Greystone campus in St. Helena and the Copia facilities in the city of Napa. The $14 million in total bonds will be used for the Greystone facility. Is that correct? I'm just verifying I have my numbers. Portions of the $14 million. Thank you. In order for the bonds to qualify as tax exempt, the city of St. Helena must conduct a public hearing, otherwise known as a TEFRA hearing, which stands for the Tax Equality and Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1982. The reason why this item is brought before City Council, there's two particular reasons. The first is pursuant to Section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, and it basically states that any tax-exempt bonds being presented for a facility constructed within the city does have to go before City Council, and the hearing does provide members of the community an opportunity to speak in favor or against the use of tax-exempt bonds for financing the project. So the city has no financial obligation for these bonds. It is a purely administrative item on the part of the city. As Mayor Galbraith indicated, there is revised language in the resolution based on comments and feedback that we had received that, and our city attorney or Mr. Hausch can speak more on this. What the revised language does, it ensures that by approving the resolution for the bond issuance, it by no way obligates the city to approve or saying that they don't have to go through the normal process, the planning and development process for this particular facility. It is staff's recommendation that the city council adopt the revised proposed resolution, and all information that was provided to staff for this report was provided by CSCDA. And we do have both James Hamill from CSCDA and Tom Bensel from CIA to answer any further questions on this project.
Any further comment from Mr. Hausch or Mr. Brown?
I would just say, in response to some concerns voiced from the citizenry, clarifying language was inserted exactly as Ms. Mitz indicated, that ensures or clarifies that if the council chooses to support use of the bonds to fund CIA's renovations, it in no way prejudges their future review of any project that comes before them associated with the bonds or CIA.
There's no estoppel under the circumstances. I got it. All right. Any further questions of staff by members of the council before I open up the public hearing?
I assume from time to time we have TEFRA hearings, and I'm just wondering, does the city actually have a policy in place to help it decide when it's going to approve a TEFRA hearing application and when it's not? especially with the notion of public benefit and direct benefit. That's really where I'm focusing my attention. Others may have different ideas. I didn't see anything. I was kind of looking through our codes and didn't see anything that says, well, this is how you decide whether you do it, other than just rubber stamping it, which I'm not inclined to do. I'm looking for the shakes of the head are no, which probably is typical. But are we required to find a direct public benefit to the city of St. Helena in order to approve the resolution?
I do not know the answer to that question. I'm going to turn to the city attorney or potentially to James, the representative of CSCDA.
Yeah, and I would defer to the applicants for this. There is nothing in the city code. There is no city resolution or policy governing when and under what circumstances the city or what findings are to be made with respect to TEFRA financing. So it would really be, I view it as something that is utterly within the city council's discretion. In other words, whether and to what extent this does satisfy your perception of what serves the city's interest is in your discretion, and you can say yes or no to this with very little limitation on that discretion. But again, I would defer to the applicants who work with the TEFRA process regularly.
All right, well, let me open the public hearing. Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the councils. My name is James Hamill. I'm Managing Director with CSCDA. To your question, Councilmember Doran, the findings typically, this is as Mrs. Mitz pointed out, this is really a procedural requirement for two reasons. One, under the federal tax code that requires the public hearing, as she pointed out. Number two is we are Joint Powers Authority, which you are a member to, and we do not want to do any financing in your backyard without you knowing about it. Under the tax code that Mrs. Mitz pointed out, there are no finding requirements by a local agency. Those finding requirements do fall on us, CSCDA, as an authority, which our board takes into account and does make public benefit findings when it does come to our board, which meets in Sacramento. So those findings do come about.
Thank you. That clarifies it for me. Thank you.
All right, any further public comment?
I'm Anthony McKelly. I'm not sure if you're voting for these bonds because the CIA is a good thing for St. Helena. I mean, if that's why we're here, if this is what this is about, because I'm going to tell you some negative things about the CIA. I drive by Pratt Avenue every day, and in here it says that when they redo their housing, student housing on Pratt, they're going to protect the camphor trees that are out in front. When they did the last project, I watched them cut every root on those trees, and one has already died. And I went to Jim Haller from your tree committee at the time they were doing this, and he said, because it's on private property, we can't tell them how not to destroy the trees. So I really can't trust them for that. The students on the campus walk through our neighborhood all the time when they go to the bars downtown, late in the evenings, and sometimes they hoop and holler and do things. In fact, a year ago, across the street, a fire mysteriously started after they walked by. They use a lot of water. They lose a lot of sewer at that facility, and yet it's nonprofit, so if I understand that right, the city gets no benefit out of them. They're moving all their activities that make any money for the city to Copia, and yet you're going to help them finance bonds to build up Copia to take money out of the city. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. And I know when the CIA first came here, it was a choice between them or an 1870s in that building. Because the developer, that was a choice before the city back then. I think today, you don't keep giving things away to the CIA. Because they keep taking from you, and they give you no benefit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Donna Hines, Pratt Avenue. I think I have more questions than I do comments. My first question is, part of this $14 million going to the dorms, or is the $14 million just for the Greystone renovation. My second question is it premature for the city to approve the issuance of bonds before the project has been fully vetted through city planners, planning commission, and city council? And I understand that the revised language was added to the resolution, but I still question whether it's premature to even make a decision on issuing bonds before, this project has gone through those procedures. And then, even though it may not be a procedural requirement that there's a benefit to the city of St. Helena, I mean, let's make sure that any project that comes to the city of St. Helena has benefits for the city. I mean, especially a big project that's going to put a large burden on our water and our sewer. And we've heard tonight, in this particular area, there are already sewer problems. Based on the literature that's been put out by the CIA, they're talking about adding 200 students. 200 students are going to be added to that Greystone facility. And then in addition to that, or as part of that, they want to add 137 dorm beds to the dorm on Pratt Avenue. So there's going to be increased traffic, noise, use of water, sewer, and other resources. And I really do not see the benefits. CIA has stated in its material that the acquisition of Copia will allow the CIA to reduce activities at its Greystone campus by relocating employees, programs, and event activities to Copia. It appears that the visitor and entertainment type programs that would benefit our community are moving to Napa, and the St. Helena location will be primarily for the benefit of the college students. One example of that is Flavor Napa Valley. I personally have loved Flavor Napa Valley and have attended for several years, and this last year it was already moved. Most of the activities were moved to Napa. And for the foregoing reasons, I believe that the City Council should not approve the issuance of bonds at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would just for clarification, the project description that I've reviewed shows that there are currently 200 students, and that they're seeking to expand that by 120 to 320. So I need clarification there as to the source of your information.
The information is in an attachment that was with my letter, and I guess that didn't get printed out. But
No, that's what I'm looking at.
Oh, you have the attachment?
Yes.
Okay.
It says currently the enrollment is 200 students, and they're seeking to expand it to 320, so that would be an additional 120.
Okay, well, I might have gotten that information.
Oh, that's okay. I just want to clarify.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Hi, Susan Kenward, 2835 St. Helena Highway. I actually live right next to the CIA. And I'm not for or against it. However, I have some concerns that it's going a little bit too fast, and for most of the same reasons that everybody else has spoken about tonight. It came on very fast because this is the first time I've heard about it. I did a quick bit of online research on the CSCDA issue of bonds for nonprofit higher education facilities for construction, rehab, and et cetera, of buildings. And it seemed to me that the local agency that is a member of the CSCDA is the host of the project, which is St. Helena and Napa. And as part of that application, it said that they must demonstrate that the community will receive a public benefit. I think that's online. If you go to there, there's tons of information on their website. There seems to be nothing in the staff report about the benefits. And I mean, I'm just reiterating the idea that isn't it wise to do this before the whole project is approved? I think that's a little premature as well. And is there some sort of city policy for these TEFRA hearings on how we should award these bonds to alleviate any discrimination later on if a bond is denied to someone else? And finally, I'd like to propose that the city fill the requirement to list the benefit analysis to the city in order to let everyone in educational facilities within the city of St. Helena understand that if they wish to apply for one of these bonds, that they will also need to provide public benefit as required. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Ellsworth, Sylvaner. I feel like we need to better understand this project before this goes forward. Even though we're not bound to approve it, this kind of gets the ball rolling. Then it gets harder down the road if we don't like it. We see this with some projects where they start as one thing and start morphing into other things. I think it benefits us as a community to know what we're getting into ahead of time. And keep going back to that cost-benefit analysis. We need to know that the entities that we're going to share our community with, and we like sharing it. We like sharing it with the Culinary Institute. But we want to make sure that every business that we're sharing our community with is sharing it with us properly, because we have limited roadways. We have two-lane roads that feed the entire Up Valley. And every business that's approved in Calistoga, in the county, comes through here. So we need to know what we're looking at. We certainly like having the CIA here, but we're at a point where that northern part of town there is dealing with a lot of impacts. Los Alcobas Hotel, the Culinary Institute. We've got some big wineries up there that have there's a lot of traffic going through that area. So the other reason, the thing I want to bring up is that the reason we have a public hearing is not just because it's the law. It's to actually hear the public comments and the reasons our community has concerns. So we know that it's a publicly noticed hearing and that's all you have to do. But the reason to have it is to protect the community. It's like a law. The reason we have a law is not because we like laws, it's to protect the vulnerable parties. So that's the value of the hearing, I believe. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Griffin, Pratt Avenue, or Park Street again. I think we're starting off right again here, putting the cart before the horse. I mean, you got a major project going on in that area with problems. Let's solve the problems first. You know, the Grandview thing is totally destroyed Pratt Avenue. Park Street is all tore up. I look in your major plan here for your streets and stuff. Nothing's ever mentioned about that in the town. And then you got this big project here coming in. You can't tell me that it's not going to impact anything around there. And then the way you notify people about when a big project is going on, I know that Mrs. Hyde was notified because she has property within 200 feet. Same with the Grandview thing. Ray Qualia lives in the corner. He was within 200 feet. Nobody got a letter or any projects going on at Park or Cornella. I mean, it ought to be within a mile radius when a major project like this is going to be major impact on the streets, the infrastructure of the city, and the culinary. The city gets nothing out of it. Them being nonprofit, you guys are holding the bag. You're broke now, and you're going to get broker if you keep continuing to go the way you're going. Calistoga has a major project. They're getting a new fire truck out of it. They're getting major sewer work done in the city that has nothing to do with the project. The project guys are doing that there. This city needs to wake up and come to the party here, or this whole town's going to fall apart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Pam Simpson with the St. Helena Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to just talk a minute about the direct public benefit of the CIA. The CIA is the second most Googled attraction in Napa Valley next to the castle. It is the one thing that really drives people to our website, to our city, and everything that they put out has St. Helena next to it. It establishes us as a culinary destination. It gives us sophistication, and it brings a lot of recognition to St. Helena. Some marketing benefits to that is that it really helps our numbers. It really helps bring people to St. Helena. This Culinary Institute is going to continue with some of their visitor-facing activities, including boot camps, which put people in our hotels. They're also planning on keeping the restaurants open. There's 2 restaurants, that and the bakery. Both of those will be open. The Spice Island Marketplace will remain open. and we see direct benefit in sales tax. They are one of the top 25 sales tax generators in the city of St. Helena, and I think that needs to be taken into consideration. They employ over 70 people. Those are jobs for people who live in and around St. Helena. The chef students that attend the CIA are professionals. These are people who are already chefs with a graduate degree. They come out here for advanced learning. And Tom can correct me if there's anything incorrect here, but these are people who are established chefs. And the fact that they come to Napa Valley and they tweet from here, they talk about it, they go back, they talk about how amazing St. Helena is, back at Blackberry Farm, back at some of these major restaurants across America where they work, when they go home and talk about Napa Valley, and they talk about St. Helena. They attend our farmers markets. Also, these students shopping in Sunshine. They're buying gas at our gas stations. So those are all direct benefits of these students. I think that, the fact that they are a world-renowned culinary school with a great reputation brings a lot of panache to the city of St. Helena. I think we're lucky to have them, and I think we need to do whatever we can to support them. I also would say that they do an amazing job with community relations. I don't know of a nonprofit that they haven't opened their doors to have events, and that they haven't, given back to the community whenever possible. I think they're a great neighbor, they're a great resident, and that we need to keep all that in consideration, and we should try and support them as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further public comment?
Jose Martin, 1075 Pratt Avenue. My issue is I'm impacted every weekend with the traffic and parties that they're having at the CIA. Students walk up and down my street every single day, 2 o'clock in the morning. Sure, it brings a lot of people into St. Helena. Right now it does, but with the changes that they're planning and everything that I know of, that they're moving things to Napa, it's going to create less of a benefit to the city and to the community, and that's the biggest issue. If we allow them to put a 3-story or three 3-story apartment buildings down on Pratt Avenue, what do we get out of it? The tax revenue doesn't go up. The fire department doesn't get any benefit from it. They're up and down the street all the time going down there. So what is the benefit to the community and to the city of St. Helena by allowing them to add these huge apartment buildings? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further public comment? Okay, I'll close the public comment and invite council discussion. Do you want to lead off, Ms. Cole? No.
I always have to lead off.
All right, Mr. Dory?
Well, sure. So it seems to me that I'm glad that Pam spoke about the benefits. I would like to suggest that we delve into that more rather than, and I trust some of your statements are accurate, but I think you're speaking more of the past, and I'm looking at what the future is going to hold, and I don't know what that is. I think there may be some benefits, but I think it's kind of strange that the applicant is not standing up and saying these are the benefits. I would like to see more of a commitment for the future to see what the direct benefits are to the city, not look to the past, because the whole model of the CIA is dramatically changing. Much of what they're doing now is not going to exist once the construction is done. Much of what they're doing, much of the money-making operations are going to be moving to Napa. And so I agree with the chamber director that there are probably some benefits to look to. I would suggest, and maybe I'm off base here, that the applicant, that first of all, we table the issue and not make a decision right now, and give the applicant an opportunity to meet with our city staff to negotiate or provide a really strong commitment that these are the things we're going to do. We're going to open the space for nonprofits. We are going to maybe serve meals at Ronda House. We're going to connect with the high school and offer some programs. We're going to allow our spaces to be used for, a much lower cost. I hear about those commitments, but I like to see that in a little bit more of a written commitment. and then have them come back and say, these are the findings, because ultimately they're going to have to make those findings, it appears, to the other agency, because that's what they're looking at. Why don't they do it now so that we feel comfortable? So I would say let's postpone this to maybe September, have that opportunity to have that dialogue and hone in on that so that they come back and say, we now can tell you exactly what the benefits will be, and here's our commitment to the city of St. Helena, rather than having it more speculative, and I don't feel comfortable with that.
Just a minute, let me see whether there's any further council discussion.
Well, it's my understanding that the TEFRA process is only open to nonprofits and public benefit corporations that are nonprofits. Is that accurate?
It also applies to multifamily affordable housing projects.
Okay,
And
so which is another
they're all
public benefit.
they are all public benefit.
All nonprofits. So, I mean, these are tax exempt bonds that the tax code has set aside for nonprofits. And, I mean, one of the reasons that I know about this is because the Montessori school applied for this, had its public hearing, and we were successful. And so it allows a financing vehicle for public benefit corporations, which are, identified as nonprofits, to have a vehicle, a low-cost vehicle to do improvements on their, or capital improvements. So, I mean, we have one issue before us, which is the bonds. A school is, by definition, a public benefit corporation. And whether it has a direct benefit for the community, I mean, somebody from San Bernardino County could have come and asked St. Helena to do their public hearing. We did our public hearing for the Montessori school at the Board of Supervisors. And it was just, to open a public hearing, hear what people have to say about whether or not St. Helena Montessori School is a public benefit corporation and whether it fits into that definition, not whether or not their project or what they're going to use the money for has a direct public benefit to the community that they're in. So I don't know that the arguments that the neighbors bring up are really what we should be looking at, as opposed to when they bring a project to us, then we really need to take a look at what impacts the project has, what impacts our mitigations that we can do to offset any problems to the neighborhood, to traffic, and all of that. That's where I think in this resolution it gives us that language to really show that it's two separate issues. This is just a financing vehicle. This is how I understand it. So.
All right.
I think this is more of an administrative act for us, but I'm not sure it's premature to issue the bonds. There was some comment about that because they're probably, that's their choice when they want to get the funding, and they are probably going to use some of the dollars to get their project started. We're definitely not approving their project here, and I think I do hear what Paul is saying about making sure that in the future the Culinary Institute benefits the town, and we can do that in the hearing on their project. I think historically, in my opinion, the Culinary Institute has been a huge benefit to St. Helena, and they are shifting some of their impacts to Napa. The jury's still out whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for our town. I mean, you can argue it either way, but I think that I think we should approve the bond, and I agree with Paul that we should make sure that when their project comes before us, we do tie some community benefit elements to it to preserve that for the future.
All right. Mr. Ansel, did you want to speak further? Let me reopen the public hearing, give you a chance to speak.
Sure, thank you. Tom Bensel, Culinary Institute of America. And apologies, I thought that the last time I was here that there was kind of a Q&A afterwards and I was going to get asked the question, so that's why I didn't step up. So just a couple of clarifications. The bond, the funds from this bond are not for the Pratt property, plain and simple. And James can speak to that more clearly, but there are very clear restrictions on where we can put the funds. And the funds are not going to Pratt. The funds are going to renovate a 21-year, a school program that has equipment that's 21 years old. The normal life of restaurant equipment is about 10 to 15 years. So we're far beyond that. So this is one of the elements. Also, the numbers were slightly skewed. We actually are allowed to have 200 students. We're asking to actually add 100 to 300. So that's where that is. As far as the benefit goes, I saw the letter and I started thinking about the things that we do. And I've been at the Culinary for a little under 4 years. I'm a graduate from Hyde Park a long time ago. In my time here, I can easily say that I have sent out more than 1,000 gift certificates or awards to people to use for benefits, for fundraising, for their nonprofits within the valley and beyond the valley. And we do that on a constant basis. Our students work in town. Our students, our baking students go to the Veterans Home and serve the veterans. They go when they're doing their cake class. The cakes go down to Rianda House. When the Lake County fires happened, our students were there feeding people. Our students were in the bake shop over the weekend baking and doing things. One of our adjunct faculty manned the tents there and fed thousands of people per day for over a week, and they were supported by other faculty and staff. So, I really find it odd that people would not think that we try to offer and we try to be a good community member. We've been here for 21 years. We feel that we do our holiday open house. We do nonprofits. We offer them, for the Lake County fires, we gave them the barrel room. We supplied all the food. We charged them nothing so that they could raise money for their fundraiser. And we do that often. So I think from our standpoint, we want to be a good member of the community. I think that we've proven, and we can prove if someone wants to see all of the documents that we've sent out, that we have been and we try very hard to be. So that's kind of where I believe we stand as far as being a benefit to the community. We feel that we want to be that. We feel that we do offer something, and in the future, that's all we want to be. The other thing is that as far as the restaurant goes and people moving down to Copia, the parts that we're moving down to Copia, we're not lock, stock, and barrel pulling everything out of St. Helena. What we're doing is allowing ourselves to have a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more elbow room to be able to do things even at a higher level of hospitality. That's what we're doing. So there's a little bit of misunderstanding that we're pulling everything out of Greystone. We're not. Greystone is far enough up valley to not cannibalize, and Copia is far enough down valley not to cannibalize Greystone. We do our special events. We have our restaurants. We have our store. We have our consulting wing. These are people that we do our industry events. Not all of them will be at Greystone because they conflicted with our academic calendar. Some of them will still, Some of them still will be at Greystone. The Healthy Kitchens, Healthy Lives that we do with Harvard School of Public Health. That's 500 doctors coming into St. Helena for a week, staying in the hotels, eating in the restaurants. That stays at Greystone. Flavor Napa Valley actually was at Greystone this year and will be next year. We hold the grand tasting in the barrel room on Friday night. We moved it from Friday to Saturday, and we are still doing all the demos and things. And we're meeting with Flavor Napa Valley next week to do the same thing. So,
would you be willing to meet with our staff and make a commitment in writing to continue the things that you're talking about now?
Absolutely, it's what we've promised the citizenry of Napa as well when we first went down to Copia.
What is happening with the restaurants specifically? You say two. My understanding was that the main restaurant will be closing, and that a very small, limited restaurant would be taking its place.
Right. So, and what actually, so from a revenue generating standpoint, it's almost the same amount of revenue being generated, only in a smaller environment and more economically. So with the larger restaurant, when we went more to as a student classroom, the academic calendar is such that we're not open all the time. So when you start doing that, people aren't sure when you're open, when you're not. So that happened a few years back. So what we've done is we've moved it down to or we're intending to move it down to a smaller space. We still believe that it'll generate $1.5 to $2 million in sales, which is about a $500,000, $750,000 less than it used to. But we also look to increase the sales in the bakery cafe, because when the restaurant is not open, there are plenty of visitors. I mean, I could count a couple of hundred visitors today that were at Greystone, just walking through the campus, going into the store, going to the cafe, going into the restaurant. When those people are here, they're generating revenue. So if the restaurant's not open, they go up to the cafe. We are a nonprofit, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to actually make money that we can drive back into the school. So we're not looking to lose money. So when we have an opportunity, we take it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thanks.
Hensel.
Can I just add one other benefit that I
Sure.
see that I forgot about, which our town tends to skew old. I mean, sometimes I'm at the Cameo Theater and I'm 53 and I feel like the youngest person there. I like the energy that the students bring to our town, and they bring a certain energy and perspective that I think is a benefit.
Okay.
So because the applicant has suggested that he'd be willing to meet with the staff and kind of hammer something out a little bit more concrete, I would move that we table the issue for at least to our next meeting, allow some specific concrete proposals to be vetted by our staff so that we can feel comfortable that we've exercised our oversight obligations, and that we don't give up, frankly, a point of leverage. I mean, we should get not that I distrust, it's just more of the more we can get a commitment about all the things that were done in the past, that we will continue to do those, and these are the things that we're talking about. And just revisit this and go forward at that point. I don't know why we'd want to do that now, but
I don't see a reason to. I mean, I trust them. I don't see why it can't be tied with their project. They've been a member of our community, an upstanding member of our community for 21 years. It's a beautiful historic building. There's certain timetables that I'm sure they are under.
no, I understand that. I just don't.
I mean, we're not having a meeting next time, so that pushes it into August. I guess I don't. I've been not a lawyer for long enough. I'm not as suspicious, Paul, as you are. I'm not as cynical as I used to be.
I'm not as hopeful that during the project review and the construction phase that we will be able to legally require them to make their space open to nonprofits at a nice price and to continue to do the things they're doing. I'm not as hopeful that we will be able to mandate that, but I know right now we have a point of leverage, and this is where it should be. Right here is where we should insist and not just take folks that, clearly it's been a benefit. I don't doubt that. Historically, it's been a huge benefit to our community. I just want to make sure that when I look at this 2 years from now, that it didn't go sideways on us, that we have a firm commitment. That's all.
Well, I find this a very interesting discussion. Basically, my mind is pretty much where the vice mayor is, that our role here is pretty limited, and that what we are asked to do is to conform with the procedural requirement of the Internal Revenue Code. I find it very difficult to think that that even in a month's time that we would want to seek to extract a long-term commitment. I see all of that coming up in the context of the project review. I think probably what I'll be most interested in I'll be interested in many things in terms of the project review, but it's, to me, the main impact from what they propose to do is not particularly relevant here. It relates to the addition of the 100 students and the impact of that on the immediate community, and whether at that point we can, as other universities do, require that they make some contribution, some in lieu tax contribution that helps us to deal with the impacts of the students, that kind of thing. But I don't see that as particularly appropriate for this evening. I agree with the Vice Mayor on this one.
So are we done?
Yes, I think so.
So how does this need to be couched? I would move to approve the resolution before us, as amended.
Right.
Second.
Ms. Black?
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Kroll?
Yes.
Doring?
No.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. All right. That takes us on to item 16. Consideration of proposed approval of a resolution authorizing city manager or designee to submit an application in the amount of $300,000 for the 2016 Notice of Funding Availability for the State Community Development Block Grant for an owner-occupied housing rehabilitation assistance program, including the approval of program guidelines.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight for a public hearing, as you so well stated, on the Community Development Block Grant, otherwise known as CDBG. This grant is released annually and is from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and is awarded through the California Department of Housing and Community Development. CDBG eligibility is based on census tract and other demographic data, so the city is not eligible for all of the items that CDBG funds. The purpose of the public hearing today is to approve the proposed application for this year's funding and also to alert you of other items that the CDBG grant can fund. For example, it can fund business assistance programs such as microloans or facade improvements. Next year, when our ADA transition plan is complete, we can apply for infrastructure funds for sidewalk or curb ramps for those ADA improvements. It can also fund new housing or construction or rehabilitation of buildings and grounds for public purposes, again, keeping in mind those demographic criteria. The grant application that I'm proposing tonight is for a similar program to the HOME program, which I talked about earlier in the staff comments that we were awarded last week. This grant, if awarded, will offer a 30-year deferred payment loan at 0% interest to low and moderate income homeowners to assist with repairs to help make their homes safe, sanitary, and code compliant. Common repairs are roofs, windows, heating systems, hot water heaters, ADA improvements, such as to someone's bathroom, and seismic bracing for manufactured homes. There's a maximum loan of $30,000 for mobile or manufactured homes and $60,000 for single-family homes. If expensive health and safety issues exist, the city manager can authorize an additional $10,000. There are also specific requirements for debt ratios, which are outlined in the proposed program guidelines, which are an attachment to the staff report. City staff in this case will also be assisted by the City of Napa Housing Authority for the program implementation. According to the guidelines, up to 15% of any loan can be used for non-essential items such as fencing or landscaping. The key difference between this program and the HOME grant is that for this program there is no limit on the after rehabilitation value of a dwelling. Annual income limits apply, as do other eligibility factors. A public meeting was held last month at the Vineyard Valley Mobile Home Park, and with over 20 attendees. The proposed grant program was very well received. I also received 2 written comments, also in support of the grant application. If we're awarded this grant, it also creates a revolving loan fund with any loan repayments going to assist additional low and moderate income homeowners with needed repairs. After the public hearing is done, the resolution that is before you also contains the proposed program guidelines. These are the guidelines that are also recommended by the state for successful and uniform implementation of housing rehabilitation programs statewide. In closing, I recommend that you hold the public hearing. I look forward to hearing any public input on the proposed grant application, followed by the adoption of the resolution, which allows the city manager or the designee to approve the grant application in the amount of $300,000. Do you have any preliminary questions?
No. Let me open the public hearing. Anybody wish to comment publicly? I'll close the public hearing. Any further council discussion?
I say do it.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would move approval.
Second.
Ms. Black?
Second, sorry.
Councilmember Kroll,
Yes.
Doreen,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith.
Yes. All right, that takes us to item 17. I think we can get through 17 and then perhaps have a 5-minute break before we go to 18 if people would like.
Steve's going to hold us hostage.
Okay. So 17 relates to the sales tax issue, and Ms. Black, I think you're on.
I am. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My item before you tonight, can you hear me okay?
Sure.
The item before you tonight is regarding the transactions and use tax measure, which I'm going to refer to as sales tax. During the 2015 goal setting meeting, one of the main focuses was securing the city's financial future and also explore revenue options. In the 2015-16 budget, it provided for a polling survey which was conducted the end of January, early February 2016. At the 2016 goal setting, the Revenue Task Force provided an extensive report exploring revenue options. At the March 22nd meeting, the polling results were provided to the City Council and it favored a tax measure. At the May 24th meeting, Council directed staff to return with a tax measure, which is before you tonight. We have measures in place that we'll be going through regarding the transaction use taxes. That's going to be before the voters on the November 8th, 2016 ballot. It's going to be a 0.5% sales tax increase with no sunset. It's going to be a general purpose use, focusing on maintaining current level of services, ensuring adequate rainy day fund, provide funding for police, fire, public works, and other city services based on council direction. I'd like to highlight the revenue will stay in St. Helena, which is an estimated $1.4 million annually. This is a destination-based tax. The tax is not levied on prescription, medicine, non-prepared food like groceries, rent, or house utilities. I'd like to note that out-of-town shoppers will also be helping support city services. The funds cannot be seized by Sacramento, and all the money will be used for the benefit of St. Helena and its residents. I also like to point out that other cities have enacted similar measures successfully with no negative impact on local sales or businesses. The ballot measure language will be to fund vital city services such as local street maintenance, 911 emergency medical, police and fire response, pedestrian, cyclist, traffic safety, park maintenance, library services, programs for youth and seniors, and to preserve the city's long-term financial stability and small-town character, shall the City of St. Helena adopt a 0.5 cent transactions and use tax generating approximately $1.4 million annually, with all revenues benefiting the city. Without the sales tax, the city will be unable to fund the needs of the community. I'm going to present some next steps, and then we can have a discussion. So the first step is to hold the second reading of the ordinance, adopt by title only, and waive further reading. And this will require a 2/3 vote. The second step is to adopt a resolution placing measure on the November 8th ballot, and this also requires a 2/3 vote. Third, adopt a resolution authorizing the City Council ballot argument, setting City Council priority for filing written argument, and directing the City Attorney to prepare an impartial analysis. Now, the next two resolutions are optional, and One is to adopt a resolution authorizing rebuttal argument regarding the city measure. The deadline to submit rebuttal arguments to myself will be 5 p.m. Friday, July 29th. And that resolution is a majority vote. The final resolution is authorizing the City Council to release the rebuttal argument regarding the city measure to third parties that the City Council members will need to identify and provide written permission to the City Clerk. So at this time, I would ask if there's any general questions, provide public comment, and then we will go back to each item one by one and determine the outcome.
Well, what I would propose to do is open it up for public hearing, close the public hearing, and then go through these items one by one. As to some, I don't believe there will be any council discussion. As to others, there will be, and see whether we can then act on each of these items as we move forward. So let me open it up for public comment. Any public comment at this point? Hines?
I just wanted to thank the City Council for moving forward with this tax proposal on the ballot. I think it's a great way to start getting our city back on good financial footing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start with the second reading of the ordinance. We don't have to physically read it. Is there any discussion with respect to that at this point? So at this point, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the second reading and adoption of the ordinance as set forth in the staff report.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Black?
Councilmember Kroll?
Yes.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. The second item is proposed resolution ordering the submission to the qualified electors of the city of St. Helena, a measure to approve a transaction use tax ordinance at the general municipal election to be held on Tuesday, November 8th, 2016.
I would note that there is a revised form of that resolution that is available in front of the council this evening. It's available to the public. That reflects comments received just recently from the county elections official, Mr. Tudor.
All right, so they're formal comments to keep us in compliance with what the county does.
So
correct.
Move to approve the revised resolution.
Second.
I just have the need to have a potentially typographical error corrected in the resolution, and that is in the question itself on page, of the handout, no pages one, it's on the second page. I don't know why I'm so uncomfortable with this, but it says adopt a 0.5% cent, and I would prefer to clarify that to say percent, 0.5% or a 1/2 cent, one or the other. It's kind of a combination of both.
If I might, it's changed to 1/2 cent transaction use tax.
Okay, well, it's still here though, right?
It-
Well, that will be corrected. Okay.
Yes.
Percent sign is.
So the percent sign is gone, and it is just simply going to say 1/2 cent transactions.
All right. Thank you.
Very good. So, I think we've had a motion and we've had a second on this. So, Ms. Black?
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Kroll?
Yes.
Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. The third item is proposed resolution authorizing city council priority for filing written argument regarding a city measure to approve a transaction use taxes ordinance and directing the city attorney to prepare an impartial analysis for said city measure submitted at the November 8th, 2016 general municipal election. And I believe it's in the context of that, of number 3, that the council should consider and hopefully approve argument in favor of the local sales tax Measure D for the city of St. Helena. So far, so good?
Correct.
All right. Is there any discussion at this point?
No.
So I would invite a motion to approve item 3, which would include the argument in favor of the local sales tax Measure D for the city of St. Helena.
So moved.
Second.
And I just want to clarify that that includes the entire body of the council.
Correct.
Okay,
In other words, each member of the council will be signing on.
correct, okay.
Yeah, we'll talk for a drink.
And I'm sorry, we had a first.
I just wanted to clarify, just in terms of transparency and openness, may I assume that this, the argument itself has been distributed to anybody in this meeting? I mean, this is a,
It was provided to the council and also the public. It's provided in the back for the public as well.
okay.
All right.
I'm sorry, we had a second?
Me.
I'm sorry. Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Kroll?
Yes.
Doreen?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. That takes us to number 4, and this is whether the city council should authorize rebuttal argument. And let me see whether I can state the issue that's before us here, which is that if we authorize rebuttal argument, it would seem to me in the normal course we would wish to respond to the rebuttal argument. The problem that we have is that the rebuttal argument is due July 29, 5 p.m., and that is, in fact, the ending date for any submission. And therefore, if we allow this, we would not be able to write and timely submit a response to the rebuttal argument. So far, so good?
That is correct.
Okay, so given that, and let me take the lead here, my strong suggestion is that we do not go for the option of allowing a rebuttal argument. Everybody following that?
Yeah, yeah.
I would agree.
Okay.
I would just ask
I mean,
Tom,
in a perfect world, I would say we should do it, but we don't live in a perfect.
do you have experience, Tom, in terms of other ones that you've seen, in terms of what the standard of practice is? Is it usually waived, or is it?
Well, I did look into it, and what many jurisdictions find is helpful under these time circumstances is that the council will delegate that to a subcommittee or to one member of the council to write that rebuttal.
Right, but the problem is that
What
we're out of
what
time.
are we to rebut?
We're out of time because any submission opposing the tax is not due until July 29 at 5 p.m. The election code says that the city clerk keeps that confidential until 5:01 p.m. and then there's no further room to submit a response. That's the time schedule that we are in, as I understand it.
That is correct. There is no rebuttal to rebuttal.
So it appears generally that cities try to anticipate what an argument's going to be and be prepared to have 5 or 10 arguments and go, okay, this is the one we're going to use because that matches. You have to anticipate what the argument will be to rebut, correct?
I think the problem that we have is that we just are up against this July 29 deadline. Had we started earlier, we would not be in this bind.
Oh, I missed that.
That's
Okay,
the problem.
I understand.
That's the
That's why we
problem.
don't live in a perfect world.
Understood.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I understand that now.
Yes, I'll open it for public comment.
I'm Bobby Monette. I'm speaking as a resident and a voter. And I think it's really important to have a response to rebuttal because there might be some there. And why don't you just repeat this? I think this is really, really well. This covers everything. I mean, you have it written, or just maybe look at it and see especially the bottom part that has the comparisons between the cities. So anyway, I think why not just repeat the argument in favor if you can't if there's not time because of the canceled meeting. Because as a voter, sometimes I'll just go to the rebuttal, and I think it's important to have it there, even if it's a repeat. But
Okay, thank you very much. As I understand it, it's not related in any way to the council meeting. It's related to the fact that the rebuttal argument can't be due before 5 p.m. July 29, but that also is the end of any argument that can be submitted by the city to the county clerk. So that's the timeline we're under. So at this point, I would suggest that I would invite a motion that we do not allow rebuttal argument under this.
Wait a minute. So one thing. I hear what Bobby's saying. Basically, she's saying that there might be somebody who wants to express their opinion against this tax.
Right.
we don't know exactly what they're gonna say, which is why we can't submit a reply because the deadline will have passed, unless we anticipate not a direct, we can't anticipate exactly what they'll say, but we anticipate, we reply to any potential rebuttal by saying something along the lines of, well, she was suggesting we repeat this, but I was maybe suggesting that we say something along the lines of, if this tax doesn't pass, these above referenced services are going to face budget cuts. I mean, I don't know if that's maybe drastic, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, we don't know. I see what you're saying. We don't know what they're going to say, so we're not going to be able to craft a reply in a timely manner.
Right.
However, I understand that the public may feel compelled to submit a rebuttal. There's a lot of people out there who are, opposed to sales tax, and frankly, I wasn't such a big fan in the beginning either. So, given that, I don't know. I'm really kind of on the fence about it, to be honest.
My difficulty is that if I'm going to write an effective
You want the last word.
rebuttal argument, I want to see what a response to a rebuttal. I want to see what the rebuttal is so I can respond fairly and directly to it. And I don't believe a hit or miss response is likely to be effective. That's the problem I'm having.
Yeah, I mean, I see both sides of the situation.
So at this point,
and I do realize it's very critical that it's critical to our fiscal health to pass this. So.
right. So do we need a motion on this?
Or we just let it die?
The only other thing I would offer, Mayor, just as a counterpoint, is that as we move it forward in the community may signal some concerns. And even if it's not in the argument, the community itself may say, what? And so we may use it as a clarifying statement that, oh no, that's not the way it works. And so I would prefer to leave it open. I understand your point, but I just know the way this community works, they're slow to digest information, and at the last minute you get a bombardment of information, and it would be nice to, but I mean, we're only talking about, a month, so maybe people won't comment in the next month, maybe not. Maybe I'm talking myself out of it by saying, well, you're not gonna get a lot of activity, although I have been receiving comments already, and they're a little bit different than what we've argued, and I'm not sure if we want to leave our options open to address some of the other issues in terms of, our budgeting, how we do our reserves, those kinds of things.
Also, well, again, I just go back to the point that I don't see how you can write a credible response without knowing what the rebuttal is. That's where,
Right.
that's
In other words, let the question stand.
Yeah.
Yay or nay?
And-
Well,
it'll be-
you're assuming that.
I mean, and we've got between now and November that we're going to be talking to.
and it will be thrashed out in the newspaper.
Well, the assumption is that we've addressed everything in the initial argument. I know we haven't, although I'm comfortable with the initial argument. It's a strong, good argument. I support it. But I know that there are other things that are on people's minds. So I would just like to leave the option open, but
Well,
So are you suggesting you craft a reply without seeing the rebuttal?
yeah, we're limited to the number of words we have here, so I'm sure there are other arguments we can make that we'd make later, but that's okay.
keep in mind, too, that the rebuttal is not 300 words, it's some fewer words.
I know.
It's hard.
250, I think. I think it's 250,
It's
right?
very hard.
And what's the reply? Even less?
I don't know.
Mr.
Well, I'll
Mayor,
go.
Yes, Ms. Black.
if I may, just to point out, our argument in favor of the ballot measure will be first on the ballot. It will be first, and then if any arguments in favor or against come in between now and July 22nd, those will be known. Those will be public after July 22nd, 5 p.m. So if you perhaps wanted to write a rebuttal to any of the arguments received for or against, you would have that opportunity between July 22nd and July 29th.
I thought
So-
here we said that the rebuttal arguments weren't due until July 29.
That is correct. The rebuttals are due July 29th. However, we can receive additional arguments outside of our own.
In other words,
but
is the difference
somebody can
between
put a
receiving?
rebuttal in
So we
between
can,
the 22nd and the 29th, and then we wouldn't know until when?
so I'm sorry, could you restate your
I mean,
question?
If we allowed this and somebody still could put a rebuttal in between the 22nd and the 29th.
So,
She's saying that an argument has to be delivered against it by the 22nd, and that we either decide, well, we want to be able to rebut that, but if we do decide that, it's due on the 29th.
Is that?
Oh.
And
Then I had it wrong.
and then the next resolution, you would actually authorize authors to provide a rebuttal.
Okay, so,
Oh, so that's something completely different.
yeah, I'm sorry if I got it wrong. Okay.
My apologies.
Okay, so the issue is, do we allow a rebuttal argument? And if we do, then we should designate one of us to write the response to the rebuttal
Well, so-
between the 22nd and the 29th. Is that?
That is correct.
So the public has the option to submit an argument against it until the 22nd.
For or against.
For or against, and then so we're going to have a special meeting between the 22nd and the 29th to discuss this.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Tom. If they would need to authorize the author tonight in the second resolution or the fifth resolution that's provided, and it would not have to come back before the council to authorize the.
That's right. It does not have to come back. You would authorize that this evening.
Oh.
You would trust it. Alternatively, you would trust the person you designated to write that. Alternatively, that could be delegated to a third party, or alternatively, you could conduct a special meeting,
Where we
which
could
is
all put
obviously
our
what we're not
input
trying to do. But
What?
an additional alternative is that you could call a special meeting to designate somebody or to approve a rebuttal argument.
Right, to collectively come up with one and approve it.
But as I was saying before, what's typically done is that is delegated. That task is delegated to one member or two members of the council.
Okay, well, that changes the ground rules, I think, significantly. Under those circumstances, I would support the filing of the rebuttal argument by the 22nd, and then I would recommend.
No, by the 29th.
No, by the 22nd.
No, we're filing the rebuttal argument by the 29th.
But let me back up again. Can arguments opposing what we've adopted here come in up to the 29th?
No.
Oh, okay, the 22nd
No, they will
is the
become
deadline
public.
for them.
They will become public at 5:01, July 29th. I'm sorry, July 22nd.
Okay, July
5:01,
22nd.
July 22nd.
Okay, so what I would propose then is that we accept rebuttal arguments and that we designate either one or two members of the council to deal with the rebuttal argument or the response argument to be filed on the 29th. Does that make sense? And do we have a volunteer for this?
Sure, Paul and Sharon.
Well,
So
I'm going to defer. I'm starting the trial on that date. I know I'm going to be distracted. I can receive things by email, but it's going to be dicey, so I defer to. I would like to have the mayor be involved.
I'm gonna be
He's
gone.
going to Switzerland.
Oh, you're going to.
Yeah, I'm going to be at a wedding until the 25th, but I'll be here between the 25th and the 29th.
All right, well, why don't we designate you
So-
and the vice mayor to come up with the,
Okay.
If I may, though, if we could, we need to take action on the resolution to authorizing the rebuttal.
All right,
First.
I move to authorize a rebuttal.
Second.
okay?
Councilmember Kroll?
Yes.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes. Okay, so
then a motion to.
So the next motion would be a motion designated council members Kroll and White to write an erudite and effective response to be submitted on or before 4:49 p.m. on July 29th.
And you trust us. Good.
Fair enough?
And call a special meeting if you need one.
Yeah.
It's a 24-hour. Your trial starts the 25th, Paul.
Okay, so do we have a motion along those lines?
So moved.
Second.
Vice Mayor White?
Yes.
Councilmember Kroll?
Yes.
Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith?
Yes.
It's appropriate that the two volunteers.
Okay, very good. So does that complete everything we need to do there? All right. That takes us, well, it's going to take a 5-minute break. Okay, let me reconvene the meeting of the St. Helena City Council for July 12, 2016. I understand we now are on the video stream, and we have been for some time. I would also ask council members to continuously, when they speak, look at their microphones and be sure they're speaking directly in it. We now have the star performance of the evening, Mr. Palmer, talking about the CIP program, and the city manager, before she left, implored me to say to you, take your time, make sure we understand it all.
Okay, thank you. Whoa, I got a little feedback. Yes, thank you, Mayor, City Council. Tonight I'm presenting to you the City of St. Helena's 5-year capital improvement plan. Planning tool, 5-year planning tool identifies anticipated capital improvements and their funding sources for fiscal years 2021. This is a budgeting tool, it's a planning tool. It doesn't really appropriate any money, so just keep that in mind. The first year expenditures are programmed into our operating budget. The out years, so years 2 through 5, are not. They're just used as planning tools. I'll talk a little more about why that's important a little later on. My slide. The goal of the CIP, it's a lot like last year's CIP. Basically took last year's CIP, adjusted priorities and funding based on current engineers' estimates, updated and changing regulatory requirements. And so our goal is really to maintain and improve city infrastructure. This CIP focuses a lot on actually just maintaining it and complying with regulatory aspects. So not a lot. We have one new project. Everything else is maintenance project, rehab type projects. There's $18.7 million in here over 5 years, divided into 4 categories: civic, streets, wastewater, water. Just in light of the city manager's comments, I can stop in between each one and see if there are questions or comments from city council that I can address at that time rather than trying to hold them all to the end. This is just a quick introductory slide that shows the 5-year program and the funding or expenditures by each category. So for civic improvements, there's a total of $411,000. For streets, $2.9 million. For wastewater, $2.3 million. And for water, $13 million. And then by fiscal year as well, you can see the cost there.
That's a large number for water.
Yes, and yeah. There's more to follow. More to follow. So this is just this fiscal year 16-17 by funding source. It shows a breakdown. A third is by bond funds. That is water projects. That's the $3 million for Upper York Dam removal ecosystem restoration project, and then the other expenditures there. The grants also 15% grants. The majority of that is also for Upper York Dam removal ecosystem restoration project. So that project's taking a big chunk of that number in the first year. And then the 5-year program, it's a little pie chart showing expenditures. It really shows that a lot of our CIP spending is water and wastewater as dollar values. So just moving on to civic, and this first bullet is repeated in each one of these categories, is that the program, at this point, the plan utilizes existing capital fund balance. So over time, the city had been accruing money in capital project funds, separate from the wastewater operations fund, enterprise funds. They had been setting aside money into capital project funds. So this plan doesn't take any new money from rates. So as we have expenditures over as rates come in during the years for water, wastewater, I'm not transferring money from operating expenditures or from the revenues over to capital projects. This plan just focuses on spending money that's already been set aside. And so as I get into the slides for water wastewater, it'll become apparent as to why I program it that way. For civic, the money's all coming from the general fund, and the city set aside money for the downtown restroom project, and that is what this money is being spent for in civic. There's some other token amounts towards building maintenance. As you can see here, we got some token amount towards building repairs, a softball light project that the recreation department would like to do, and then the bulk of it, then the $291,000 remaining in 16-17 is for the downtown restroom project, which is currently in design. In response to some questions we had come up last council, or a couple of council meetings ago, I did include a table for each impact fee program in my presentation here as well. So this is the civic facilities listed impact fee program. What I wanted to point out, and some of these have been expended, so I didn't actually delete ones that were already delivered. Maybe I should have, but I've been working with the finance director to figure out what monies from impact fees have already been booked against projects. And we haven't completed that review yet, so I just left them in here. But like the library project, I believe has been done. I believe the general plan update's been done. This Carnegie Building seismic retrofit, I believe, has been done. But what I wanted to show here is these projects all have pretty large costs, and there's a new development share. And I think I mentioned this before, I tried to explain it, is that new development can only fund its share of projects. It can't fund the entire project unless the entire project is needed to support new development. So when you do the impact fee studies, you have to identify a percentage of the project that's attributed to new development. At the time that study was done, and was it 2011 when impact fee 13? They assigned a new development share of 11.6% for all these civic facilities. So that means when we collect all the revenues of every building permit we anticipated being issued left in the city, we'd have $2 million, or 11.6% of the need. And so the city would have to make up the balance of that 88.4% that remains to deliver these projects out of other revenues. So new development can't pay for it. So it'd have to come from general fund or some other source outside new development.
So I have a question there. The explanation kind of helps me work through that because that was my concern. I guess my question is, could we reprogram the existing monies, for example, in the civic impact fee account, and just dedicate a larger percentage of them to one of the projects? You know, still, I understand the 11.6% share and all of that, but if we just decided to say we're going to use more money, for example, for one of the smaller, the courtyard building improvements, we're going to pay for that, all of that, using some funds from the civic impact. That? Could we do that? Because the way you have it allocated, we've chosen all of these, but what if we decided just to focus on one? Is that a policy question, or is that restricted? Could we do that, I guess, is the question.
Right, and that gets to the nexus between the new development and the project, and the short answer is no.
Okay.
I mean, you have to only spend 11%, 11.6% of the project cost can be funded by new development, each project. So you can't lump it together into one and say lump 11.6% to make one project. That's not allowed.
Okay.
So this is a pretty basic part. I just threw it in there for completeness. Everyone's got it. These are all general funded projects in this in the 5-year CIP. So put this in again. I'm utilizing existing capital fund balance, and that current fund balance, that money that's already been set aside, is roughly $400,000. And the 5-year program I have submitted here is actually totals $411,000. And what that means, I'm over-programmed. I don't have enough money to deliver everything I've said I'm going to deliver in the CIP. So I did it just to make the point that we're not setting aside enough money, and we can't maintain the facilities we have. We can't make the improvements, all the improvements listed in here, even though we need to, and we know we need to. I'm $11,000 short over 5 years. So we'll get to year 3 or 4 with year 4, and then year 5 will be zero money spent because there will be no money left in the capital fund balance. So even though I'm showing in year 5 $20,000 $20,000 for building repairs, there won't be any money there to spend at that time. So at some point we'll have to address that. It's not as bad in Civic as it is in some of the other funds. So I'm going too fast. I got one over there. That's why. Okay. So, well, before I move on to any other questions about Civic, I think. Okay, I'll move to streets. Again, I'm utilizing existing capital fund balance that the city has accrued, primarily from gas tax revenues into an account. I have no new funds programmed until fiscal year 1920, and that is when Measure T revenues will come in. There's some issue I need clarification on as to whether funding will be available in 1819 or 1920. I think my understanding is that the sales tax starts in fiscal year 1819, which means we won't have any money to spend until the following fiscal year. That's my understanding, so that's how I programmed it here for Measure T. I mean, that can change in the next year as we move forward. But and then also at that time, I've increased the general fund expenditure. I didn't put that in the slide. But what happens is the Measure T has a maintenance of effort requirement. So there's 3 fiscal years that go into this calculation where the Measure T can't supplant money that the city had already spent or was historically spending on street maintenance. So we can't substitute city money for Measure T money. We have to keep spending the same amount we always spent. And there's 3 fiscal years that are used in that calculation. I believe it's 8, 9, 10, or 7, 8, 9. So at that time, the city was spending some general fund money towards street maintenance. So we'll have to kick that in again in 1920.
Do we know what that amount is? And does it average over so many years?
It's in the
can't be much.
in the CIP. It's like $120,000. Okay, let me look.
That's what I thought. That's not much
in here. Yes, $125,000
per year.
Per year from general fund, plus the gas tax, which I'm estimating is $125,000. It varies with each year based on the revenues, but so that's just again that number hasn't been officially adopted yet. I'm projecting that based on the Measure T regulations, but NVTA has to establish a committee, and they have to have meetings, and we have to submit all this data to them to support that number. And there's some more work to be done there. But so this is my back of the envelope calculation projection based on what I've read.
Peter's going to help us there.
And the streets, again, priority is given to pavement rehab. So I haven't programmed any projects that build new roads or expand capacity. Really focusing on maintaining existing facilities. So here's a list of the projects in the CIP with their fiscal year 16-17 budget along with estimated expenditures. The top one is, I'll just hit a couple highlight ones. The top one is Main Street, Mills Lane, Grayson Avenue. That's the traffic signal. And this year, in prior years, I had put in also as expenditures $300,000 that we were getting from the STIP through the state program to fund that project. I've taken that out this year because we're only, that money was assigned to Caltrans. So since city's not going to construct the project anymore, and that money was earmarked just for construction and we couldn't use it for anything else, we're allocating that money. We already did through the CTC. We allocated that money to Caltrans so they could build the project. I left in there $8,500, which is the cost to purchase the right-of-way from the wine train to install the signal, which council approved that I think a year ago, and we've still been trying to finalize that with the wine train. And which we did last week, so that will move forward. I put some money aside to do access ramps. At $20,000 a year, I'm really only getting one intersection probably. So as we go through the transition plan, ADA transition plan, and that gets updated, then I'll start prioritizing and programming which intersections we're going to go after, which areas we'll go after. But as city managers talked before and included in some of her long range financial forecasts, excuse me, the curb ramps and sidewalk replacement and curb and gutter replacement is a huge number. There's a huge liability there or a need there to construct new infrastructure and replace existing infrastructure. So one intersection at a time, $20,000 is about all I feel comfortable putting in right now, based on the amount of money we have available at this point.
Yeah, my memory is that the total need was close to $2 million.
That could be right.
On the R78, the 2016 pavement overlay, I guess I need some clarification there. You're identifying 1 year. Why would you not identify other years up to 2021 and include that? Maybe I'm not saying it right, but that's...
No, I understand. So I included those in the R74, the 2015 pavement rehab. I pulled, and it's because I don't know year to year. I think the idea is going to be to alternate 1 year slurry, so 1 year overlay, because I don't have this. I frankly don't have the staff to be able to do them both, and we're a small city with not a limited number of streets that residents can use. So I think doing both the same year might be a hardship on the residents. So. So anyway, I put them all under the R74,
Okay, I see
and then
that.
as overlays come up, I'll pull the overlays out as separate projects because they're more complex than the slurry seals.
Okay.
And I'll probably just leave the slurry seals as rolling in R74. But anyway, and then I did have some money there for curb gutter sidewalk repair. We're going to finish up Pope Street bike lane project this year. I put R78 or R38 downtown Renaissance in there. And these are the pedestrian bicycle improvements for downtown on Main Street that have been talked about for a while. I know there was a committee and the chamber was involved in some work preliminarily to get that done. I think at one point the CIP included like a dollar amount. I changed it all just to be determined because I think we need to spend some money doing some pre-project planning and some cost estimates in order to really get a better handle on what that would cost. And I think you could spend as much as you want on that project, honestly. I put in there the R73 Hunt Avenue RLS bike ped improvements, which we have gone after the Active Transportation Program grant money for unsuccessfully. Still, there is a documented need there for some crossing improvements and sidewalk improvements, so I'm leaving it in there as unfunded. We talked about pavement rehab. Mitchell Street sidewalk project is the next one that's under construction. Well, it's complete now. I put some money there just for closeout costs to finish up invoicing to the contractor, but it's done. Railroad Avenue curb ramps is replacing the curb ramps on Railroad Avenue. We got a TDA grant money to do that work. So that's primarily grant funded there. And then pavement overlay project. And I'll talk more about the 2-year pavement rehab program in my presentation. But at this point, I'm anticipating those would be Charter Oak, Allison for 2016 pavement overlay. Pointed the wrong way. So I included the list for impact fee transportation projects. Again, want to pay close attention to the new development share. See, for the most, what I want to point out on this, I mean, the top two are great. The new bridge, and then this traffic signal, which is now being funded through the STIP grant. So that actually can be taken out of this and to kind of expand on what Councilor Doring was saying earlier is that even though I can't combine 425s to make one project, we can change project names and titles and move money around as long as we follow that percentage distribution. But it has to be done through an update to the impact fee program and update to the Nexus study. And so that's the path that we should be going down, is to update these to reflect current cost estimates, reflect current needs. I did want to point out another one that a lot of these are projects that are extensions of existing roadways that are in the general plan as roadway extensions, and in the impact fee program, they're only funded as bike ped emergency vehicle access areas. So they're not funded as full roadways through the impact fees. So if those extensions ever get built as a full road, the impact fee can only pay for 25% of the cost to construct a bike ped EVA trail. The impact fee will not pay for the cost of a roadway. So as we move forward and do an update to the Nexus fee, that's an important question to be reevaluated is, do we want to include full roadway funding in there? What level of funding do we want to include for those extensions? Is bike ped EVA still appropriate, given what's in the general plan, or do we want to make a change? And so that's just pointing out so people can start thinking about it. There are limitations to what impact fees can pay for based on the current Nexus study, but that can be changed and it can be updated, but it has to be done appropriately.
Can I ask a question about the new bridge over the Pope Street Napa River?
Yes, sir.
You've got where does the $1,200,000 come from? That strikes me as an extremely inexpensive bridge.
I agree. It strikes me as very inexpensive. That is the estimate that's in the current adopted Nexus fee document.
How soon is that?
So that's, and, right. And so, you can't, as costs, even though the cost may not, may be higher than that, it still can be 100% funded. That's a case where you can shift some money from other projects to that project as long as it's still within the correct percentage. So as the cost escalates, the impact fee can still pay for every single dollar spent on that project. The problem is then you may not be collecting enough money to pay for it. So you need to catch up over time, and you'll need to update it to catch up. But at least legally, you're allowed to spend your impact fees on 100% of that project. My pie charts, and the most important thing here to notice, it just graphically shows that Measure T kicks in at some point, and at that point, general funding will have to go from current zero to to $125,000 per year.
Well, not from zero, it's going to have to continue, right? At 125, is that?
Well, right now it's zero. Right now it's zero. So right now it's zero, and for, I think, 5 years it's been zero. But the 3 years before the measure was adopted, those are the 3 years that are used in the maintenance effort calculation. Because they don't want people to game the system and try and adjust expenditures immediately before the measure got adopted.
Yeah, I learned all about that from studying Proposition 13.
So the existing capital, again, the money program for the gas tax there is using not gas tax, all the money programmed except for the grants and measure and impact fees are using existing capital fund balance. And the current balance is roughly $750,000. We're estimating about $125,000 a year for gas tax revenues. However, my 5-year capital project expenditure is almost $1.4 million. So, and in streets, in streets we stay positive. So it's not like the Civic where I'm saying we're going to run out of money. In streets, it's programmed so expenditures match revenues. We have enough money. We have money coming in. We know that, and that's because all the revenues are known. We have a good amount of Measure T coming in soon. We have an amount of gas tax that we can use respectably. It's not a large amount, but it's enough to make a difference. The only point again is that the general fund will have to start kicking in money. And so here's the 2-year pavement rehabilitation program. I just pulled it from last year. This is what I presented last year as part of this same update. We presented as part of my 2-year pavement rehabilitation program. So I added, and it didn't show up as brightly as I'd hoped, but these are all the streets I said we were going to do last year, and then I put in bold when they're going to be done, and they're all getting done right now. In fact, next week is actually when they'll be doing the slurry sealing. They've done the base repairs. They've done the crack sealing. Next week they'll be doing the slurry seal work. So those treatments will all be done. There. Oh, I jumped. There. And then we also had put in the 2-year program microsurfacing and overlays. And the microsurfacing was something we included in the initial bid for the slurry seal project when we did it last winter or fall, and the bids came in really high. If you guys if you recall, bids came in hot, so we pulled those out, rejected those. I pulled those streets out, just did slurry seal. So we're going to reevaluate if that's something we do next year. We're going to throw those streets back in the mix and go through the prioritization again with our budget numbers and figure out if those are still ones that we need to do now or if something else pops up. And then overlay at the bottom, city's been promising that to the community for some time. They're important, needed improvements, so we're going to follow through. And they're currently under design right now. I'd hoped to bring them to council at this meeting for approval of the bid documents, but it didn't get done in time. So hopefully at the next council meeting, we'll see authorizing the bid for that project, and we'll hopefully get to work on it.
May I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
In terms of how you plan and program, do you think about, and is it appropriate to anticipate future development in certain areas? For example, Charter Oak, there might be a hotel out there or whatever. I'm just throwing out an example. And wanting to maybe wait for that. Is that an appropriate thing to do? To say, well, the development's going to have to pay for that, not the city. Or do you just go, that's a need and we got to do that? We can't wait for development. Do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think about it, and it's something I consider. It's not something that goes into the calculation necessarily. There's a whole database that goes in, it calculates, and it comes up with, here's the list. But then, as a public works director, it's important that I look at those and make sure that, just because it says some streets in year 1 versus year 3, I mean, there's not a huge discrepancy in the need at that point. We just know it needs to be done soon. And so moving those things a year or two up or down in order to make a better project, like you're saying, if there's something under construction on that road, then yeah, like the school is building, right, the auditorium. So we're not doing anything on Grayson right now.
Okay, that's a good example.
I mean, that's a good example of we're waiting on that. Another one was in the El Bonita area with Magnolia Oaks was building their project. We weren't doing anything in El Bonita because we knew they were putting the sewer line in. So if we know, and we know we have a good timeline, we know it's happening, then yeah, we make some adjustments.
Okay.
Do you factor, and I don't know how much longer Charter Oak can wait, frankly, but
Granted.
do you factor in the impact to the businesses on those streets or not?
Well, that's a tough question. There's always impact.
I mean, I'm terms about, I don't mean impact to the businesses. I'm thinking more in terms of time of year. For example, our businesses are hugely impacted right now by the construction. So I can just only imagine that if as soon as that is finished, we start ripping up Charter Oak, right, in the peak season of September, October. I realize that there is a time for construction of roads, and maybe Charter Oak is so desperate it needs it, but anything in that Main Street corridor, I think we should be sensitive to the fact that, really all of our businesses are down hugely because of this construction that's going on right now. It's terrible. It's really, and we're going to see it in sales tax, reflected in sales tax also. But anyway, if we think about times of year, August to October is the busiest time for businesses.
Correct. And that's exactly why Caltrans wants to have the resurfacing done before crush. That's their timeline on the channelization project.
Which fingers crossed, but it doesn't look realistic. That doesn't look realistic to me.
I think it is realistic. But we'll
Hopefully,
see.
I hope I'm wrong.
In any event, go ahead.
I was just saying, that's great feedback, and I'll definitely reach out to those businesses. If
Let's have a bet.
Well, as far as the Charter Oak project goes, it's either we
that
go out
street is
now
so
or we
bad.
do it in the spring. So
Right, and maybe now is better. I don't know.
I was working on the prioritization of let's get it done as quick as we can. I was trying to get it done, obviously, so we'd go to council tonight, and we slipped. So we can reach out to the businesses there. We did it with the sewer project, so we can coordinate with them and see if we get.
And you have a restaurant, the former Trevina, that's closed, and I don't know what the status of that is.
Me neither.
Obviously you don't want to have that open and then have a construction project right when it opens.
Right, that's what I was talking about. That and
Right.
and Farmstead.
Okay. Are there any other questions on street? My next slide is wastewater. So wastewater, again, my standard bullet, we're utilizing existing capital fund balance. What this means is that very quickly in wastewater, we run out of capital project fund balance funding, and we'll need transfers from other places. And right now, the wastewater net position of keep forgetting April's term for it. The net position is less than zero. So there's no place right now to get additional funding. Our priorities are regulatory compliance and maintaining the treatment facility. So here's the list of projects that we've got in the 5-year CIP. I think I'll highlight a couple. The most important one, I feel the highest priority one, is S52, which are the upgrades required by the new permit and the cease and desist order. So we currently have a feasibility study underway. Once that is approved by the board in September timeframe, we'll move into to a work plan. The work plan will select one of those, we'll move on with the selected alternative that'll help us meet those CDO requirements and start developing engineering documents and a plan for how to pay for the improvements. S53 is reclamation field improvements. These are improvements to the spray field to make sure they're operating optimally. Pontoon 3 levees, that's just repairing the existing levees, new riprap, things like that. I guess I can go through them all. The next one down is automation for disinfection, dechlorination. Currently, to disinfect and dechlorinate the discharge before it goes to the river, it's a very manual, labor-intensive process where we have to have operators out there running pumps and hoses and such. It's really important we get that done, dialed in a little more automation, so it'll help prevent permit violations by being able to real-time measure chlorine levels and pH and things like that, so that we can make sure we're meeting discharge requirements as we're discharging and not figured out later. Oak Avenue sewer line replacement has been talked about for some time in the CIP. I've just pushed it out into out years, calling it to be determined costs. Frankly, there's just a lot of other needs right now, and the focus really needs to be on the plant. New well for the wastewater treatment plant. Right now they truck in drinking water for the operators, so there's no water service out there. The well was put out of service a number of years ago. For the guys there, when they're eating their lunches and stuff,
Wow.
the water is all brought in a tank. You need to put it well out there for them. I put in there a sludge removal project, or kind of like we did with Pond 1A. We want to remove sludge out of Pond 1B now. Charter Oak sewer repair project, the next one, that one is complete. We've got some money budgeted just to finish closeout, final payment of the contractor and whatnot. And then the last one I put in there is installing and operating a temporary office building, a trailer. I'm really uncomfortable with the current situation with the old 60s brick building that's built on top of the wet well. So the raw sewage comes in underneath, and the operators are all sitting upstairs from that, above the pumps.
Having a sandwich?
Very very small. The lab area is right next to the kitchen. Is right next to the electronic control room. Is right next. It's not a good situation for them to be in day out, and I want to improve the operating or working conditions out there.
With respect to the sludge removal and the 1A, 1B, are those ponds comparable so that you are able to fairly determine that it's going to cost $150,000, or has one built up more? Is one larger than the other? I'm always surprised to see such a low number on sludge removal, because it's very difficult in Napa County to, I mean, not to do it, but to haul it where it needs to go. And it's very expensive from my experience in Calistoga. That number seems low, but maybe the other one told you that that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, the number is actually based on some estimates put together by GHD Engineering, our consultant that helped me with this part of the program. It certainly will be refined as we move forward.
Okay.
But this is based on their experience, based on other ponds of the same size.
Okay.
Here's the list of wastewater projects included in the impact fees. Again, the new development share is important to pay attention to. One that jumps out on me, and so I'll just cover the ones that are actually in the CIP where we are using this funding for, so like reclamation field improvements. That project has some funding the CIP kicked in from impact fees. But the one that jumps out at me is recycled water at $102,000. I think as we go through the update, we need to evaluate what is that project? What does that mean? Because clearly it cannot be extending recycled water to the entire city.
It's more like 13 million.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, whatever.
It's much larger. And then, another one is Sulphur Springs Sewer Extension at 11,000. That's maybe 100 feet of pipe. I don't know what that is, so.
Without extension.
Yeah, maybe, right.
Around
$100 a
lost
foot.
where I am.
So, move on. Wastewater funding, you can see primarily it's funded by the rates. We have some bond money we're spending down, small amount of impact fee money, and then the rest is rates. So, as I said before, we are using existing capital fund balance, which is roughly $1.1 million right now. The 5-year program I put in there is at $2.2 million. You see, very quickly, we're going to run out of money in the fund balance and have to start pulling from other sources. Net position right now is less than zero, so that means it can't come from any current reserves we have. So it'll have to come from a rate update or financing, bond financing, or SRF loan. As Jennifer Toolwater, Conservation Manager, mentioned earlier, we did meet with a rate study consultant for a long time today, and that's one of the things we talked about, because she has all this, the CIP and the improvements that we need to do and what I think they're going to cost, and we're working on timing them out. And so one thing we talked about was the need for either a bond measure or SRF loan or something to pay for some of these improvements.
Let me,
Yes, sir.
maybe because it's late, my mind isn't functioning as well as it should, but when we say we have a current capital fund balance at 1.1 million, but our net position is zero, are we saying it's zero because the 1.1 million is already committed?
Yes, it's actually in a separate fund. In accounting terms, it's in a separate fund somewhere.
Yes, that is correct. So the wastewater net position being less than zero is actually for Fund 571, where the capital fund project, that's actually, the money's already been moved over there. It's in a completely separate fund. So when Mr. Palmer is referring to the wastewater net position, it's wastewater account 571, meaning if there were reserves there, you could pull from reserves, transfer it to capital funds in order to finance it. But right now, we don't have any money to do that.
Okay, I got it.
Oh, jeez. Jumped ahead of me. That was the one I was looking for. So this is exactly what Finance Director Mitz was explaining, is that this is the net position in the reserves. So
Okay.
the estimated unrestricted net position as of June 30th was negative $80,000. And then we got some revenues and expenses projected for this year. And we bring some of that money back, but it's still negative $27,000 at the end of the year.
But if it's negative, does that mean that the general fund has to loan the money to the wastewater so that it comes out zero? How do you deal with a negative number?
It doesn't come out as a loan from it. It's if we have short-term revenues that are coming in to cover the deficit within, I believe I want to say it's a 60-day time frame, it's acceptable to have a negative fund balance carry over. So that's the case of wastewater.
Okay. Should have got. Okay.
If there are any other questions on wastewater, I'll move on. Water. Again, we're using existing capital fund balance through the CIP. The way it's programmed right now is it will require additional funds after this year. So we have 16-17 cover, 17-18. In order to spend money next year, we need additional transfers from somewhere. Right now, Water Enterprise this year was operating a deficit, so expenditures were exceeding revenue by $1.3 million.
All right.
So we drew from operating net position or reserves to pay for operating costs.
Right, and that's significantly attributable to conservation.
Exactly, yes.
All right.
Again, the priorities, just like wastewater, priorities are regulatory compliance and maintaining the system. Jumbled up my slides a little bit, but we could talk about this now. So this is the point now that there's a net position of $4.9 million. There's revenues and expenses projected for next year, $1.3 million coming from reserves or from net position in order to pay for operating expenditures, so that at the end of the year, estimated water net position is $3.5 million. And this finance director may need to correct me on this, but from last year, I was pulling it that $3 million of that $3.5 million is actually bond money. So even though it's showing up as a net position as reserves, actually the bond money that is earmarked for Upper York Ecosystem Restoration Project. We haven't spent it, and it's just earmarked at this point. We haven't issued any contracts against that money, but that's what we're intending to spend the money on now. So that would leave $500,000 in unrestricted net position that hasn't been reserved for capital project, which leaves a 10% cushion.
Do we have a projected timeline on our rate study public hearings?
So we're doing the meeting with the ad hoc committee August 4th. I'm not
All
sure
that.
if there'll be another one after that or not. The idea is that we'd bring it back for council action, I think, November. I think that's the timing on it.
November 7th?
That's the timing. We're
Just
trying to get it
teasing.
done as quickly as we can.
Sorry.
No,
Okay.
I understand. We're trying to get done as quickly as we can. It's just, we need a couple more weeks to have data we can share with the committee, and then we'll move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I remember from the last rate study that this is an extremely complicated study. It takes a lot of information that's being pulled together, and it does go slower than you might otherwise think at times. It certainly did in 2010, 2011, because those new rates kicked in, I think, about July 1st of 2011, but it would have been under consideration from first in the council probably back in October, November of the prior year.
So this is the capital projects we have programmed in the CIP right now. The Upper York Creek Dam Removal Ecosystem Restoration Project, which we're very familiar with. We still have an unfunded amount based on current engineer's estimates of $1.7 million. We got working to refine those estimates and still working to try and find outside money, other people's money to fund that shortfall. And then upgrade of the Meadowood tanks. These are the wooden tanks up there. There are 3 tanks that are wood stave tanks that serve the Meadowood Resort and the folks in Oak Knoll. My slides are jumping around again. And so that has been pushed out a couple years. We were originally trying to get it done this year. Because of the revenue situation, we pushed it out a year, or a couple more years to so that try and give us some more time. Bell Canyon Reservoir improvements have been something that's been in the CIP for a while. It includes dredging the reservoir and other improvements to the spillway. That's been pushed out and is TBD. Recycled water mains. It's one of those projects that would provide a nice benefit to the community and to businesses, but we just don't have the funding at this point, so I pushed it as TBD and pushed it out years. Dwyer Road Booster Station has been updated. That one originally we had programmed spending some money this year due to funding restrictions from Calistoga as well as City of St. Helena, and I think some issues the City of Napa ran into with some of their funding and rate study updates and trying to get SRF loans. They didn't get the loan they were trying to get, and so they pushed that project out a couple more years, so that's reflected in here. Bell Canyon Tower valve replacement. That was on part of that. One action for that project was on the council agenda tonight to amend that construction contract to include additional repairs. So that money is budgeted for this year. Valve house replacement.
Wait. When it says Bell Canyon Tower valve replacement, we've now replaced, as I understand it, the middle valve. We're about to replace the top valve. But does this mean down the road we have to replace the whole tower
Yes.
despite these valve replacements?
Yes.
Okay.
We have to replace the valves now because dam safety has been on the city for a number of years to get them replaced and operable so that we can, so they're all operational. And at this point, we're at the point where if we didn't follow through, they start to implement restrictions on the level of the reservoir, which we can't, and that would be extremely hard for us to be able to deal with.
Oh, yeah, of course. Okay.
Yes. the
Wow.
next step. So the tower replacement is in there in the CIP. It's farther down the next page, I believe. I have another page of water projects. So the bell valve, house valve replacement. This is an intake valve, intake to the plant. That's actually not the tower, but there's another valve closer to the plant that needs to be replaced. Holmes tank upgrade project. I want to point out on this one, I got $58,000 I budgeted this year to finish up the engineering design. The project made is that there's maybe it's 24 houses or so up off of Bieber Road that their water services from a concrete tank up there, and the water gets that tank from a pump station down on Spring Mountain Road that pumps through like I want to say it's like a 2-inch diameter pipe or something. So it's like you'd see in your house, and so the tank takes for a long time to refill, and so in an effort to provide better service and provide fire protection primarily, we need to upgrade that pump station and the piping that goes up to that tank so that we can provide water up there quicker and improve the pressures not only in that area but also over off of I think it's Dean York.
Dean York,
I was
right.
going to say,
Yeah.
does that tank go to my neighborhood?
The tank does not, but the pump station. There's 2 pump stations now. This will take out of service one of those pump stations and have one pump instead of 2 pump stations. We'll have one that'll serve both. So that neighborhood doesn't get off the tank now. It will with this project. We're going to take a pump station out of service and serve everybody at that tank instead. But we don't have the fund. I don't have the money to actually build the project this year. So even though I pushed construction out in 2 years, but we've already started design. So we want to finish that, get it to a point where we can put it out to bid, and then we'll hold off on construction bidding until we can get additional revenue.
It's a big expense.
That was another problem. Is the engine estimate came in a lot higher than what we'd estimate. I think at one point in here was like $500,000, and just because of the conditions out there, trying to put a new pipe up the side of the hill, and build a new building for a pump station, the costs escalated quite quickly. Bell Canyon Creek inflow measurement. This is something that's been required by the state. The city's been the state's been requiring the city to improve the methods by which we're measuring the inflow into Bell Canyon Reservoir from Bell Canyon Creek. We have an estimate of $750,000 currently to do that project. So we'll start work on design for that quickly. There's a number of other repairs, replacing telemetry, another valve actuator that we put out to future years. Lower reservoir water treatment is something that's been talked about before, since we have water rights and we have a reservoir, why not use that for treated water? I put that out in the TBD. Right now, that lower reservoir needs some serious repairs. That's on the other page. So I'll just skip ahead to it now.
What is the capacity of Lower Reservoir? Do you have a rough idea?
I can't pull it out of my head right now.
Okay.
Sorry. It's not a large number.
No, it's not.
And it's limited, right, because of dam safety issues? I mean, it
Right now
cannot
it's
go to
limited.
full capacity anyway.
Yes, it can't go to full capacity right now. I wish I could pull the number, but it's less than a couple 100-acre feet. I mean,
Yeah, it's not large.
no, it's not large. Tank 2 rehab. We're going to start design work on that this year. As a recurring theme, I'm going to start design work. I don't really have the money to actually build it, but we don't want what happened to Tank 2. We don't want what happened to Tank 1A or Tank 1 to happen to Tank 2. We have to replace the whole tank. We can't let it get so far that the tank needs to be replaced. So at some point, we do need to spend the money to recoat the inside of that tank.
Where is Tank 2?
Tank 2 is the one over by Lower.
Oh, that's okay.
The big green one, yes. Well filter rehab project that wrapped up this year. We've got some money just to finish closeout and final billing. Pump station upgrades were mandated by the State Department of Public Health. This is related to security improvements and backup generation, backup power, which we don't currently have. And I push those projects out a couple years more because of lack of funding. Replace 12-inch transmission main. There's significant portion of that transmission line. God, sorry. I've been talking too long. My mouth's getting dry. Sorry. There's a significant portion of transmission main in Main Street that goes down to Rutherford that hasn't been replaced yet. And it's quite old. There was a portion they did replace at one point in time, but we need to continue that program. Get those mains.
That was the slip lining project some years back.
That was one of them, yeah. There's more as you go farther south. As I mentioned before, Lower York Creek Dam Rehab. This we had action tonight on this to increase the contract for Kleinfelder. So that's the 196.95 is going to get us the intake tower valves operable, which we have now. So we've notified Dam Safety those intake valves are now operable. So now we have upstream control on the dam, so we can close off the water pipe through the dam in the event of some kind of seismic event or pipe failure. We can shut it off so that the pipe is no longer pressurized, and the dam won't wash out and fail if the pipe fails. But we still need to do the geotechnical evaluation. That was what we had to amend the contract for tonight. With DSOD, they saw the work plan, requested more stuff. We negotiated some more scope from them or with them, tried to get them down. But we got to a point where we all agreed this is the minimum necessary. So we're going to finish that evaluation. That's the $190,695. But then we'll need more funds. If the repairs need to be made to the dam, if we do the seismic analysis and determine that the dam is not stable in a seismic event, then they'll have to evaluate whether or not there is a feasible way to even repair that dam. It's been built, as some of the council may know, it's been built over time. It was originally one height, and then over time the city added to it to make it higher, and then I think added to one more time to make it a little higher. And then at that point they oversteepened the slopes, so they no longer meet kind of standard slopes, and I think in some places they're oversteeped to 1.5 to 1. So they require special evaluation and may not be able to be repaired. And then, as I mentioned earlier too, Bell Canyon intake tower replacement. We budgeted that $2 million. That's something that, if you saw the pictures from the staff report, the tower is in really bad shape. And I can't in good conscience wait on it any longer. It needs to be fixed. We've seen the divers were in there this month, and they looked at it, and the top upper valve, they needed significant repairs. And it's galvanized metal, and it's all, there's significant amounts of rust and corrosion, and it just has to be done right now. It's a critical piece of infrastructure. If it's not functioning, we can't get water out of Bell Canyon Reservoir. And then upgrades to Rutherford Pump Station, which I've talked to before. I'm pushing that out so we can fund other projects that are higher priorities right now. And again, we did go over a lot of this with the rate study consultant today. It's being evaluated as part of the rate study. Cash flow, SRF loans, bonds, they're things that will be discussed as we move forward, discussed with the ad hoc committee. So we're going to work on what we can this year, and then we'll see what happens with the rate study after that. Impact fee projects, here's the list of projects with impact fees. Again, the ones that have some impact, the projects in the CIP that have some impact fee funding, we are utilizing, and again, up to that development share percentage. So, I don't know if any that you guys have questions on it, I'd answer them. I think I'm getting a little tired of talking right now. Pratt Avenue Transmission Bridge, I'll point out that one because it's one we haven't talked about, and I think all the others we've talked about. The bridge, there is a pipe hanging on the bridge,
right?
And it's getting to the point where we're concerned about it. If you recall, during the council goal setting workshop, I actually talked about it and showed some pictures of what repair we did recently.
Right.
where we had a gasket leaking and we had to repair it. So we're concerned that it's going to continue to happen. We had one go. We're concerned another one's going to go, and you've got the transmission main from the plant and the reservoir to the city residents hanging on a historic bridge. So
Well, right after that meeting, I called Steve Lederer, and you notice they fixed that. There had been a car accident like several months before that had damaged the guardrail, and he was right on it actually that afternoon. Did you know that the county could be responsible if our water main went down? There was another accident. He's like, no, I didn't know that, Sharon.
Okay.
Beginning. I'm curious, just if you can estimate, how many of these projects were considered in the last fee study and just didn't get done? Or
I'm waiting for the slide to come back. Go back. Oh, wait. Where are we at? Yeah. I'll go forward here. Okay.
I could tell you quite a number
yeah,
of them were.
I'm curious, when we had the prior rate study, are these the same projects that would have been brought up at that time, or are these mostly new projects?
Some are.
Projects on the list
Some
are
are.
the ones that were from 2013. If you're asking if they were from a prior rate study, I don't know.
The last rate study
Yeah,
was
I
in
don't know.
2011, right?
2010, 2011,
Right.
there certainly is a considerable listing of capital projects there. The effort was, and I was certainly involved in it, to identify and cost out all those that we could reasonably put our fingers on at that time. The list was not as extensive as this one, but certainly some of the major ones that show up here go back to 2010.
I'm sure time has
Including, for example, the need for much improved flow monitoring at the reservoir, the valve house at the reservoir, I think the valve at the intake of the plant. There were any number that were certainly considered and costed out back in 2010.
So the explanation is that costs went up, and now we have to, we might have to ask
There are
more.
probably multiple explanations, but
I'm just kind of getting a sense. I don't know. I'm
But
just asking.
certainly one of them that impacted the city was the fact that Tank 1A, which we cost out in 2010 at around $1 million. I remember it was about $1 a gallon, $1 million tank, ended up costing, about 1.8, 1.9 million when it was all said and done. So,
Costs went up, and we didn't have a whole lot of projects that fed into the impact fee.
I just clicked the slide and it jumped.
Oh.
You're too heavy on that button.
all right.
Don't touch it. Well, I'm done with it. Go forward one more. And one more. It's just. Go back.
It has a mind of its own.
Right there, just leave it there. So again, this slide shows the funding pie chart. It's just, you can see from the funding that primarily funded from the utility rates. That's a
This is wastewater, though.
Take away from that. Where are we at? Oh, you gotta go
We're on
forward.
water.
More. Sorry.
Last page of slides.
There we go. So we do have bond funding in this one that we're spending down, and that's primarily for 98% for York Creek is what's left for York Creek dam removal. Can you get one more? So as I've been mentioning over and over again, the current project fund balance for capital project fund balance for water projects is $1 million. We've got $4.8 million program in the 5-year CIP. After this year, there will be no more money to spend out of that fund, and we'll need money from somewhere else, whether that's from net position, which is at $500,000, or we reallocate the $3 million of bond funding to other projects, or we get the rate study updated and we use that funds, or we do a bond issuance, or we get money from the state revolving fund loan.
Okay.
That's that's the end of my presentation.
Any further questions? All right, I'd certainly open the public hearing, but the public has abandoned us. That's understandable. The All-Star game was true competition this evening.
Going?
I don't know. Don't say. But in any event, Steve.
Thank you,
Mr.
Steve.
Palmer,
That was
thank
great.
you very much. Very strong presentation, and you know, it's very impressive to see your broad command of our various public works in the short period that you've been here, and I think we're all quite appreciative of your effort, and it obviously is going to continue as we deal with these rate increases studies. So thanks very much. All right, with that, I'll declare the meeting adjourned.
Don't we have to, yeah.
Oh, I need a motion?
I make a motion that we adopt the 5-year capital improvement plan.
Oh.
Second.
Right. Ms. Black?
Vice Mayor White,
Yes.
Councilmember Doring,
Yes.
Kroll,
Yes.
Mayor Galbraith.
Yes. Now I'll declare it adjourned.